And we're live. Hello and welcome to this is the 21st episode of Game Theory Gang. I'm your host, Maddie Allen, with the validator himself, David Feeder. And our special guest tonight is Chrispy Man. What's up?
What's up, Maddie? I'm live.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. There's been so much going on this week. And I just need to say at the beginning of the show that Chrispy has made something that instantly rose to my favorite tool of all time in HEX. And so I'm really excited to share it. I messaged Richard Hart, I think, the 6 months into HEX or 3 months into HEX. And I was like, hey, can you connect me to somebody who knows how to pull all the data off the blockchain? And he, I don't know, he mentioned a couple of people, but, what kind of billionaire responds to direct messages anyway, right?
Yeah.
We know of one at least. So I'm really excited for the show today and to have Chrispy on. And there's also been a lot of stuff going on in the news in the past week, in the HEX and Twitter spaces. David was a special guest on the Hexologist show.
Yes. Yep, I can die a happy man now. My my career is that was like a goal of mine. That was awesome. So yeah, shout out to Hexo because he's an OG legend. So that was really awesome.
You both do a lot for the community, so thank you to both of you.
Hexo.
And then we also had Richard Hart posting from his castle in France. Did you guys catch that?
I did.
Oh yeah, I like that necklace, that snake he had. That was the first thing that caught my eye. It's like fancy.
I was looking at the earrings myself, but
so am I the only one who was like excited to know that he lives in France? Maybe.
I thought I wasn't. I couldn't confirm that. From
was
the video.
That not his castle? I don't know.
Well, I saw Corey Costa posting pictures of I think that place, and I think it's like I don't think that's like a home. I think you like rent it and stuff. Oh, okay. I could be mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's like publicly available. You know.
All right. Well,
I hope he owns it.
So that's really exciting. Then Pulse Dogecoin is up at like $7.50 right now. That's one that we've been following.
Right.
But
yeah. Rocket to the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean the biggest story tonight is going to be Hex Fire. So I interviewed Chrispy like 14 months ago. And I went back and listened to the entire interview. Well, yeah, almost all of it. No, I listened to all of it and then I started listening to it again because that's how good it was. So I'm going to link that at the end of this video. But I think when I interviewed you before, I didn't realize how aligned our values were. And then, so I didn't recognize how special it was. But I want to shout you out for that because you're a super intelligent guy. You've been in the crypto space with Richard Hart from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about, just for people who haven't heard of you before or aren't familiar with your story, could you give us a background?
Sure, with nice setup. Feel like a pinata. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people probably heard some of this before, but like everyone else, discovered crypto along the way, and I certainly came because I was like, man, I missed all this stuff over the years, right? So 2017, that was a good idea to start trying to dollar cost average into things. Started listening to Richard, kept dollar cost averaging, and then went through that my first real downswing, right? And in 2018, like RG says, got mad at Richard when I listened to him call the top and tell me it was going down because I was still waiting for it to go back up, but it didn't. And then one thing led to another, and CFD token, Bitcoin HEX, and then here we are. right? And I ended up getting into crypto as kind of like an offshoot. Now, normally, if you're in traditional type of finance or anything, at least at the time, crypto's off limits, right? It's crazy talk to be going into crypto, but I'm involved in something called FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. And the whole idea is to save enough money to be able to retire sooner. And I kind of conflate the idea of FIRE with HEX because I believe you can retire or become financially independent 3 times faster at a minimum without price appreciation. So by using HEX as a tool. That's kind of like my thumbnail background.
Yeah, I like that thesis because it's different than the way that HEX is normally marketed as something that can make you rich quickly. I think that's what the whole APY thing is kind of getting at, and so we're attracting a different audience when we talk about FIRE, about financial independence, retire early, because it's a philosophy and it's a set of principles that says, don't go out there and trade away all your money. Don't go out there and take the highest amount of risk that you can take.
Right. Yeah. And then that's where it might differ a little bit in the whole crypto sphere, because by its very nature, we're in kind of a risk area with crypto.
What percent of somebody's portfolio would you imagine them allocating if they're already in the FIRE space?
To crypto? Do you mean how much would they allocate into crypto? Or should they
into HEX, let's say.
Well, you're asking the wrong guy. 100% is too much. I don't know. I think it depends on their needs and where they're at, but it's probably not unreasonable to go thirds or 20%, right? Particularly when you're starting with something. Similar to like if you're just looking at a traditional portfolio and not financial advice, but I mean, some people will go 50-50 between, securities and something like real estate, or, pick 4 or 5 different lanes of things which would be considered to be diversified to the extent anything's diversified now. You almost have very little choice about things being tied together in the traditional world. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable. And I think it was good over recent years before this big correction or dump, that generally the 1% rule was coming into play for most people. Meaning a lot of the real financial advisors, people who do advice, were telling people, 1% allocated to crypto to get exposure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's always like everything. It's always a matter of your situation.
So as I say, I was impressed when you first presented the idea of financial independence, retire early. The other cool thing about this stream we did before is that you and I had, I think, both just retired.
Yes.
From our traditional jobs, and so that discussion was also very, very worthwhile. So I'll encourage people to go and watch that. I mean, at that time too, I was talking about like behavior locking stuff. So that must have been like right around the time that I started using that term, which is something that I'm still actively pursuing. And that's, people heard me talk about that with Richard on the pulseconference.online recently. But so I wasn't just impressed by our kind of your presentation about FIRE, but now this next big thing that's the game changer that's on the thumbnail for today is what you've done with the actual website, hexfire.io. It gives people access to much of the data that is on the blockchain, and all of the hundreds of people who have started taking my free course on chain analysis, they might say, well, wait a second, Maddie, like we can see all the data on the blockchain. And while it's true that we learned how to go on Etherscan and different other tools to look at individual transactions, one of the barriers we ran into was that Etherscan doesn't even allow you to pull out 5,000 transactions from HEX. Ever since, there have been more than 5,000 transactions per day. They have like a limit on pulling data off their site. And so I've been stuck for a long time, not having a place where I can go to pull individual data or all of the data together. In certain circumstances, you can't even pull individual data on Etherscan, and in all circumstances, you can't pull all of the data. But now you've created something. How's what you've created different than what existed before?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's start with your class first. So I'm really happy that you included the the whole forensics of the blockchain in there, because it's a very necessary tool. Because you don't know if somebody's put something together, what they're serving up to you elsewhere is correct. So it's very important to be able to go check and see if it was right. And the only way you can do that, even if it's on a spot basis, is be able to get into the blockchain and go look up that information. Not to mention, it gives you a greater familiarity, if you're interested, right, in how those contracts work. And that's pretty important. And so I like that you got that going on. And then, man, you ought to be able to give all sorts of homework with the site that I put up, right? Because
yes,
you go find the stake that staked 333 tokens for 333 days and tell me what day it was, whatever.
yes.
Before we start digging too deep into that stuff too, I do want to shout out to this, right? So yeah, I think this is a pretty cool site. That's why I'm up here talking to you about it, and I've been talking to other people about it, kind of get the word out, so go take a look at the information. So that's good. But like everything, built on other people's work too. So a big shout out to Tagash, out of HEX Daily Stats guys, also over to Kodiak and to Kyle, because really, man, they've been putting up with me for months. Because I'll send them a message and I'm like, I can't figure this out. I'm going to throw my computer on the ground, and they'll get back to me a little bit later and tell me, well, maybe you ought to look at this. And I'd go run off and go work on something else. But eventually was able to pull some of this data together. Now, how does it differ? Yeah, I ran into the same type of thing, being that Excel kind of desk jockey. I was like, I'm going to go out Etherscan. I'll just download the transactions. Well, until you realize you can't get more than 5,000, 10,000, right? And then you go, well, I'm smarter than this, man. I can go run an API and go pull them down that way. And then you find out, well, man, I got to do the whole blockchain, right? Yeah, because there's not some API that tells you exactly what you want to know. And then you go a little bit further and you realize, man, I need to talk to somebody like David and start a node, because it's going to take me forever to get this information. By the time you got the information, you're like, you're already long past any decision points, right? Is kind of the thing, because it's so big. All of that represents, while there are ways to get the data, certainly there's devs listening. They're like, man, I get whatever I want, whenever I want. That's true. But for the average person, maybe who's not like an Excel jockey or somebody who's got their hands in code, man, it's kind of like a barrier to entry. And so when I go to all these sites, I'm always like, I think they're giving me the right information. I got some good sites I love. I like HEX.vision, Dex.vision. I mean, I'm using backup HEX all the time. I got all these sites, and they all do their own thing because each author did their own thing the way they were doing it, and it was kind of like set up that way, right? And that's really what the main difference is. So I'm going after kind of a different set of information functionally. It's all the same data, but it's obscure stuff that probably in the grand scheme of things sometimes doesn't matter that much to operation, right? For us to continually operate as a community, knowing that there's big payday stakes out there, for instance, that are expiring, is good enough, right? Knowing exactly how many and on what day, it's fun. But I mean, does it really make that much difference? Maybe, and you might be able to find some use cases for it. So I think the difference here is going after kind of like much more detailed information through essentially through subgraph to get the data and be able to present a whole bunch of like traditional types of KPIs, metrics, you call it what you want, information.
Yeah, almost like indicators too.
Yeah. So you can look at this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a long speech, a lot of talking. Sorry.
I mean, I really think that our marketing should be data driven, and that, you know, when I say that, you know, only 25% of user controlled HEX is liquid, I want something to back that up more than one person's word who stopped providing the data and who never provided the data to me in the first place. And so for me, I also believe that putting this data out in the open is going to unlock certain secrets about how HEX changes human behavior, or at least helps people who maybe wouldn't have had such strong hands otherwise. And so I'm really interested. It also really gives us super HEX nerds talking points as well, because we are all interested in how the share rate goes up, and you know, then we could have our little debates, and we could prove our points more accurately than just from a theoretical basis, or just trying to go off of like somebody interpreting the code into a document, and then us interpreting the document into like, you know, these beliefs that we kind of all propagate.
Yeah, sure.
It's and then you know, I think also another extremely good use case for the tools that you're building would be the future market supply data, because that should be informing how people stake. And I've already heard Chrispy's interviews. I listened to 4 hours of your interviews today with on other channels, on Thoughts Child's channel and ksb.tv. And so I think I've already heard, and I want us to get to the point in the show today where we'll have you kind of explain the parameters around when you would suggest that people might look at that versus not. Like there's different levels of zooming in and zooming out you can do to see where other people are not going to be ending their stakes, and that's can provide opportunity, but it could also lead us to have again more marketing pitches to say, hey, you don't like people dumping in your head? Why don't you get into this asset that's the only asset known to have a chart of future market supply, and then you can you could literally choose you know, to have your stake come out when other people's aren't.
I think that's a good observation, right? I think the three of us and many people listening here have heard Richard say that out loud dozens of times. You know, you can see it coming. You know what the future supply is. But I do think, like you're saying, when we talk about marketing, and there might be some people who have marketed it that way, I haven't seen a lot, you know, substantiating that. So that's probably a good point, you know. As I've gotten into this, I think, you know, because if you listen to those other videos, you heard that, you know, these are things I was building on my own. Some of them, I mean, some things are natural, like meaning I was in Excel copy paste and information, trying to figure out what was going on with share rates. And so that's what kind of leads to putting this information out there. I was already doing it, right? Again, argument could be, yeah, if you get a naysayer or somebody wants to pick at it, it'd be like, well, what are you wasting your time on that for, right? But it's something I wanted to do, is what I did, right? So I put the information up. Now that I have information and I'm building on it, now I'm thinking about, well, what should be done with it, you know, and that's kind of what you're saying. And I think there are two real big aspects for the individual people looking at it that are, you know, there's some people, one number's too many, right? Okay, that's good. They don't need to go too much further than that. And then there's other people who really want to dig into this. For those guys and ladies, yeah, let's figure out actionable data. Like, what is there that we see? Because there's a lot of data. I mean, not all of it's actionable. Some of it's just fun to look at. Like, did you know that there were 500 stakes made in 1 week in April or in July of 2022 that were 1 hex or less for 5,555 days? Yes. Why? I don't know. But if you wanted to know, we got a day. We got a week where that happened.
That almost turns into like trivia at that point.
Yeah, it becomes the trivia stuff.
And even on and I just want to compliment you too, like, and based on what Richard had said about, when supply is going to be unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go to hex.vision and look at the staking chart there and look for those gaps in the future where you see the least amount of stakes scheduled to come out. And ironically, it was kind of going toward like September's and October's. Right here in the front page of the Hex Fire is the best months to end stake in October, September. It's right on there. This makes it simple and actionable versus having to figure out, okay, I'm hunting through this chart based on what Richard said, but it's like right here. This just makes it so easy.
Yeah, trying
very
to produce
cool.
it that way. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And those are the kind of things you try to codify. That wasn't even my idea. That was a gentleman by the name of T-Don in the Hex admin chat. You might remember, because I keep asking people, "Hey, do you have any ideas?" And they're like, eventually somebody get back to me. He said, "Why don't you pick up this? Why don't you put some dates out there?" I was like, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense." So that's how that came about. Is to put that up. So I think is exactly it, right? Like maybe at some point this gravitates into a page that says, "Hey, these are important things that you should go look at. You can take action on these things." Now the other part is what Maddie said, because now I start having fun with it. Is with the data being easy and at hand, somebody said somebody mentioned something the other day. I think one of the Bennies said, "I'd really like to know how many big payday stakes are still open, what the percentage is." Well, from a marketing perspective, let's say that was something you wanted. So I went and did that. Yeah, it took me 15 minutes, but now I've got a little pie chart that shows me how many big payday stakes there were, how many were ended, and how many were open. Now, again, is that the most critical information versus onboarding new people? Not necessarily directly, but when we're talking about having information at your fingertips, and you guys come up with ideas, and if more people have the ability to get data like this, and they can build these little snippets and pieces that can go on to TikTok or into videos or be published out onto Twitter, the better, And so I think those are two big aspects that I'm seeing.
Wow. Go ahead, Maggie.
Listen, what you're doing and what Hex is doing is revolutionary, because open up, your favorite coin list that isn't lying to you, and tell me where there's a coin higher up that has more on-chain transparency. There isn't one. Hex is the number one, most visible, most transparent coin that there is. Not the most visible, because that depends who's talking about it. But so we've never been able to see in this much detail people's how decentralized finance works. Bitcoin wanted to be that, and was for a while, and then now all their the majority of their volume is on centralized exchanges. So this is even though it might be just that some nerds are digging into this more than people who are brand new. I think it's incredibly important to give access to people who want to explore this new territory.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be too what's the right word? Don't mean to be too humble about it. I agree with you. I'm super excited about it. I love it. Right? Otherwise, I wouldn't spend so much time working on it.
Very cool.
So this is pretty cool stuff.
I see some messages in the chat, and I hate to break our train of thought here, but I think it might be important, if it's okay with you guys, for me to just do a quick security update on what I think is going on here. So people in the chat are saying that Solana, a bunch of wallets are getting hacked in Solana, and that people are going on about it on Twitter. With these types of security things, sometimes it take a little time to figure out what's really going on. But I have a really strong hypothesis as to what could be going on. So we know that Etherscan has been kind of spoofed lately to show that any scam coins that get sent into your wallet, it makes it look like they're coming from a trusted contract address. So HEX bogus coins are showing up as being sent from the HEX contract. And that's not possible, and it's not true. And I already reported the problem to Etherscan. We saw on Wednesday that the scam had extended to US dollar coin. So they were spoofing coins coming from US dollar coin, and they had sent fake US dollar coins to the address that the longevity whale sent $150,000 to support Aubrey de Grey's like unofficial legal fund. Technically, it's the legal fund for the concerned longevity donors. But and then now I'm seeing, even in the HEX community, tons of reports of people saying like, how do I get this coin out of my wallet? How do I take it off my account? I created an NFT because gas is so low. I didn't mind paying $1 or $2 because I wanted to like stand out a little bit more on Twitter and like pull more people in. And I noticed that it looked like maybe somebody had sent me a fake version of my own NFT. Okay. Except what they had done is they added it to a collection with like a bad word in it. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't want this bad word NFT in my wallet. So I tried to go and send it away. I tried to, like mess with it. And what did I find? The OpenSea platform didn't, and it was created on Rarible. The OpenSea platform didn't like how much gas it was asking for to send.
Ooh.
So then I realized that this was probably somebody trying to hack me, because why else would it be asking for more gas than to be able to send something? You know, that's not the kind of thing that these NFT platforms get wrong. And so what I suspect is that anybody right now who's trying to send the coins that they got that they don't want in their wallet, and they might be trying to send you NFTs with bad words in them and stuff, that might be how people are getting hacked, is they try to get rid of those items in their wallet. They try to burn them or send them somewhere else. And then that's what ends up hacking them, because they don't realize the code that they're running. So the big takeaway here is like, if you see something in your wallet that you don't want there, ignore it.
Yeah.
Don't burn it. Don't send it. Don't swap it, etc.
Yeah, that's the best you can do. Well, I forget where we were before so just to wrap up the Solana thing real quick. So it's still unknown what's going on, right? Because this is news to me, actually. I wasn't aware. But there's a big
that's
hack
what the
going on.
chat's saying, and they said it's on Twitter that a lot of wallets have been drained. So
okay,
that could be, one way that these hackers are just getting way more well-funded and smarter, and they're able to spoof Etherscan. They're able to attack these chains with lower fees. So
speaking of chains with lower fees, you should definitely probably expect this kind of behavior on PulseChain as well in the future, because the fees will be so low. Yeah, there definitely could even be spam transactions at some point as well, because it'll be so economical. You'll be able to do thousands of transactions for like $20. So there's all kinds of shenanigans when that's a possibility.
I'm sure.
So yeah, so that's just kind of like a digression, but I think it was important because it seems like people wanted to hear about how to stay safe. If you leave the coins alone that you didn't put there, then you should be good.
I still got a few of those coins.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's I used to like some of the old exchanges that used to wipe the dust. You could sweep your accounts and get rid of the dust. Now you can't do that on your wallets because for a variety of reasons, right? Either the number amount's too small, the move gas is too high, that type of stuff. But all you can do is hide them.
Yep. Just gotta On Etherskin, I'm not even sure if there's a way to hide on there, but definitely like Ledger and Trezor in those wallets you can hide, and in MetaMask you can hide. But yeah, that's as good as it gets. So everybody be safe out there. Don't touch any coins you're not familiar with.
Or NFTs.
Yeah, or
Amen.
NFTs. Yeah.
Amen.
So now that we've got our attack vectors smaller, maybe we can jump into some of the good stuff here.
All right. I'll dig into it. You guys know where it all came from, right? So we already talked about that and why some of this stuff we're doing it.
Yeah.
Did we say on stream today where it came from?
Keep from my head. So yeah. Well, I mentioned some of the credits I'd give people for sure. Probably didn't get everybody, but so we've been building up as a community more and more ability to get data, and so then I started tracking after a lot of conversation and whatnot with whales, Profex. Some of you guys know Profex, right? And some of the other people in the chats, and Papa Boner just kind of digging at, scratching at why does TShare rate go up? I mean, I know it goes up. My big joke is I spent a lot of time to investigate this, and I now know that TShare rate goes up. But I already knew that, right, Maddie? It's kind of like what you were saying before, right? I already know it goes up. I already got 1,000 people told me it went up, and I can even look at part of the contract do it, but now I proved it went up, so now I know it goes up, right? So why did I get started on that? I got started on that because back in May, I was getting ready to do some restaking or staking, I forget which, and overnight the TShare rate went up 700. Remember that day? And I was like, I didn't know that was happening. Where the hell did that come from, right? And that kind of put me on this path of trying to figure out, what is happening with the TShare rate? How does it grow? When does it grow? And then along the ways, kind of digging at the fact that you hear all these misunderstandings about what's going on. It's only really long stakes that increase it with big ROIs. But as somebody pointed out, if that was true, then it would never go up until those long stakes came out, right? And in part, it's sort of true, but it's not exactly true. And then there's lots of other things that come up too that people talk about, like it's short stakes don't change it, but we got a list of them, every day. Short stakes change it 5 times a day now, sometimes. Anyways, so just having the information, having it visible allows better understanding. And how I got here is these were some of the things I was interested in. And so front and center, you've got this this image of this chart. I souped it up for us for this session. When we go into it, we'll look a little bit deeper.
Cool. Yeah. And we have billionaires and 100 millionaires and multimillionaires watching this show regularly, and so I think when we do present more data and transparency to that audience, it can inform them about how they can maintain their position. If you really believe in HEX and think it's that great, don't you want to keep using what worked for you and keep rebuying your TShares?
Yeah. And I just want to say right off the bat, like the first thing that catches my eye with this chart is the purple line of the estimation of the TShare price in the future. Mm-hmm. That gives me TShare FOMO so bad. My FOMO pants are on fire right now.
Wait till we get to the next page.
Oh man,
you got an extra pair of pants? Better watch out. Yeah, I know, man. Wait, cool. It's because it's crazy. This one, because I believe in this freedom of data, and I think it's really good for us. We're going to test the next page when we go through and look at it and see just how this makes us feel. Because I'm looking for feedback from the audience on this stuff, because I'm wondering sometimes knowing this is all information that's a guess. It's a good guess, but it's a guess. Is there a danger putting out information that we're guessing at, and maybe we almost know for sure it's going to be wrong, right? It'll be bigger, but how much bigger exactly, I don't know. Or maybe it'll be a lot bigger, or maybe it'll be right on. I don't know. And so we'll get some feedback from people. But yeah, I got the same problem, man. I was getting all huffy today because I'm looking at this change that's happening in September, where I fully expect the T-share rate to go up 3-4%. It'll go up another 700 overnight. And I'm like, I got to get my stakes in. Like, I need more stakes, right? I got to get my stakes in before, before September 10th. And I'm like, so yeah, it does promote that a little bit of FOMO. So that's another marketing aspect, Maddie.
Oh yeah.
If somebody understands it and they're looking like, damn it, I'm not paying 3% more for the same yield. I'm going to get it right now.
Yeah. Yes. And especially as I think the three of us, we remember when it started out at 10,000 per T-share. We surpassed 20,000. We're in the mid 20s, and look at that. We're 30K. Like 2024, like 14 months away. So it's like, wow, it's getting more expensive. And when you look at that, that's extra yield. That's extra T-shares that if you stake in the future, like you're not going to get those in the future. Like you're locking in that good price today where the red line ends. This is a beautiful visualization.
The new issuance of Bitcoin drops every 4 years, like in its rate. The new issuance of shares for the same cost, is dropping multiple times a day.
Yes. And few people understand that that's equivalent to a halvening of sorts. And
yes.
You're essentially doing halvenings 3 or 4 times a day with T-share rate increases. Different magnitude on a different scale, but I mean, famous interview with that guy Plan B. Plan B, of course, he's not so famous now, more infamous. But anyways, he was asked at one point, and that's the guy who developed the stock to flow. Hey, could you imagine how Satoshi could have done this any better? And he said, yeah, he could have done halvening every day. And I said, well, we have HEX. It already does that. Of course, he couldn't hear me. So
that's too bad. I guess to compare them more directly, the T-share rate took about a year and a half to double, 2 years to double, something like that. So it's about twice as fast as Bitcoin in terms of the new issuance dropping. And but the other thing that's worth mentioning here is that HEX, whereas Bitcoin is inflationary, I could make the argument that HEX is already deflationary if we consider all the complex factors of people restaking and people who have lost coins, people who sent to the contract address, people, the origin address. If the origin address has ever bought any coins, then that would affect the rate. And the biggest thing is, go ahead, dude.
Oh, I was just going to agree with you that the origin address, I think, is like what, half of the like inflation.
Yeah. Then people having the inflation pushed out into the future whenever their stake ends also makes it so that the actual amount of inflation that we're getting kind of depends. If you consider it like, if you take the OA out of it, then you can't really have your cake and eat it too. Like, then our inflation rate is a little bit higher than 3.69. But at the end of the day, the point is that HEX is incentivizing people to kind of mint their own halvenings more often than Bitcoin.
Yep. It's a good way to look at it. All right. So a couple of good housekeeping things for everybody. All right. This is a web page. I'm not a web designer. I'm doing the best I can, but there's a web page with different elements I throw out here, things I think people might be interested in. You might come back here tomorrow and see it all changed around. So a lot of this information is self-explanatory, that I'm putting up, last close dates and, the last day of the close, the price. You see the chart. Made up my own indicator. When you hover over some things, you might see some smart ass remarks. As I put some little things in there, but like the buy HEX now is, you should say, yeah, dummy, it's 90% down. It might be 89% down now, or 91% down from the high. So it might be a good time to buy it. Is there any special knowledge to that? Nah. But I mean, you know, other than buy it when it's low.
Maddie, I think if you hover over the green dial, I think it there was a pop-up with details. Because I did want to ask about that indicator. That indicator is just showing like the down from the all-time high, right?
Yeah, all I did was go get the high, the all-time high close, and subtract it.
All right, cool.
You know, so
I love that.
It's just, yeah, it's kind of neat. It's kind of a reminder to me I should be buying. If I'm not gonna,
exactly.
Why should I be buying when it's at 50 and 75 or you know 25%? If I'm going to buy any, I should buy it now, right? But the way the human mind works is I'm going to wait until I'm sure, and then the price will be done. Right? I mean, that's you know, buy the top, sell the bottom.
Oh yeah.
And then on the right hand side over here, I've got a little preview towards the middle, best months to end a stake. We'll go to another page later. That's just me listing out what I think the expected payouts are by month, and you know, putting the lowest one at the top. It's kind of a teaser. And then I just tried grabbing like the last 3 stakes or the last 3 days of different types of transactions, just threw them up on the screen there. So you can see some of the larger stakes that just happened and for how long, and larger ended ones and whatnot. Not fully formed idea, but you know, at one point there was that idea with HEX.live, that old website, right? Being able to see kind of like this, like a HEX WinBot type of a listings. You see what's happening, kind of like a running ticker, right? So maybe this isn't the site for it or the right tool for it, but it's just conceptually kind of the idea. So that's what's going on here at this high level.
Awesome.
All right. So now, Maddie, now click the button. Click the little gray button. Let's go look at that chart, the one at the corner of the chart.
This one?
Yeah, because I think this would be the fun one to go do. I had a couple fun things over here. So this is where you can get in a little bit further and look at what the share rate estimates are. And so now what's happened now is, since I started publishing information, I've gotten 2-3 different models have come back to me from other people saying, hey, we ought to do this, you ought to do this, you know, coming back with different models. And so I think mine's still the most conservative. And what I'm doing, and I don't think everybody understands it, so I put the equation up on the screen too, so they can go look at it if they want. But basically what the system's doing is it's taking, when you end a stake, it runs an equation, a calculation for every stake that gets ended, and it's calculating new share rate. And the new share rate, that's the calculation, and it takes into account the principal that you receive and all of your yield. Puts it through the bonus Hart's equation to come up with what the total value you would get if you got it restaked. Uses the scalar and then the you know, the staked shares that you had gotten previously to come up with a new price. Now you guys can go work the magic of math yourself, but that's the calculation. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, we have all these stakes that are going to end in the future. This is how many days they have left. This is how many TShares. And I'm just taking the moving 30-day average right now of past payouts and saying, yep, that's what we're going to get forever. Now, we know we're not going to get that forever. It's going to go up. It's going to go down, probably going to trail upwards, but it gives it kind of a baseline. And so you go through that calculation for each and every stake, you know, all 300,000-400,000 of them that are coming out, and you know what days they're coming out. So on a day, you have a race. You have all of these little fish swimming upstream, all planning to end that day. And whichever fish ends gets to the end there of their little ladder, right? And actually get ended and run that calculation. If their T-share rate, new share rate calculation is higher than the existing one, it becomes the new one, which is different than many of us thought how it worked. You know, kind of conceptually, you know, you hear a lot of things like only the biggest ROI, right? That type of stuff. And that's not exactly true. And we'll look at another chart that'll show that. But that's how this calculation is getting done. So I back checked it more than one time by going to an individual stake. Go do it yourself, you know, and run it through the calculation on a calculator, and you'll come up with probably very similar numbers. And so the numbers that are up there are for those days, or, you know, whatever the maximum is for all the stakes that might end. And same thing with months and years. And now it is very possible that some of these won't happen. Some of them won't happen. And the reason they won't is maybe that person doesn't end the stake. And if they don't end it, it'll never change it.
Wow.
Till the next fish comes along.
So the next one rises up.
Yeah.
And we'll see that on the chart. So we should, you guys, am I making sense so far?
Absolutely. The only thing I would add is that maybe not everybody knows that a heart is the smallest unit of a subunit of hex. And so just like a Satoshi is the smallest unit of Bitcoin, which is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, a heart is 1/100 millionth of a hex. And another fun fact, I was the first person in the world to sacrifice one heart for poor pleb or wrecked pleb or whatever the name of that coin is that Hexy B is making. So the title's already taken. Don't even try.
No,
And I won't get any coins for it either.
Yeah.
Uh,
I wonder how many hearts the gas transaction was.
It was about $1.
Well, that's not bad. Okay, that's not bad. Oh, that's
too
funny.
funny. Too funny.
Yeah.
No, that's a real sacrifice.
All right. So hey, so on this thing here, keep in mind this does update several times a day. It is not refreshed live. There's too much data for that, but it does go several times a day. And if you want to, Maddie, what we'll do is we'll use the actual menu, but notice up on the right hand side there's another one of those little gray boxes I threw up there. That'll bring us to the table or to the chart. And then you can also go to advanced analytics. I believe that's where it should be.
Oh, wow.
Which will get you over to the share rate model, and you can get back to it the same way we went through. Or if you go to charts and tables, you can see it there. All right. So lots of different ways to get to it. You're probably more confused than anything else, but you tool around on the website, figure it out. Go back to advanced analytics, because then we'll just close off this share rate discussion. So if anybody's super curious and they want to know what the last changes were, there's the top 10, the last 10 changes and the sizes and all that type of thing. So yep, there was one for 1 day that changed it. And yep, there was one for 12 days. What you don't see on this list, and is important to note at the moment, is you don't see anything saying 500 days or 300 days at the moment. Now they're out there in the list, it's just further down or will be coming up. So this is a reflection, and it has I believe it has a direct effect on what you see on the actual chart when we see it. We got about, let's call it 3/4 of all stakes coming out every month are 45 days or less. And I haven't updated my numbers on it in my head, but about 3.2 billion in HEX is rolling every month. And so, of course, they're driving the share rate up because that's how the system works, you know, and that goes up incrementally because of that.
Wow. I did not know that. I would have guessed it was less than 75% if you had asked me. That's quite a bit. That's a lot.
It might be 65, you know, or something, but it's a lot.
It's more than half, right?
Yeah, and when we look at the monthly cash, monthly payout estimates, you'll see what I'm talking about, and we can prove it over time. You go back and look at it. It's pretty cool. Because, you know,
65% of what is the 3 billion rolling?
About 65% of all the HEX coming out on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Yeah, right. 60% of all stakes.
All right. So if you spend any time in the chat, you know, over in the Telegram chat or look on Twitter, invariably around the beginning of the month, somebody will scream oh my God, do you see how much HEX is coming out this month? It's going to be a big dump. There's 6 billion coming out. Well, you know what? Last month, 5 billion, 6 billion came out too. And next month, 5 billion, 6 billion are going to come out. So, that isn't the right call to action, right? Because half of that has been rolling as part of this bow wave month after month.
Yeah, it's just a perpetual wall of stakes that are just less than a month. It just always follows us in time. Yeah.
Right, which now we can see. Now we can see. All right, Maddie. So I did something special for you. If you go back over to the, sorry, I keep dragging it around. We'll work on this navigation. But if you go back over to the staking, or excuse me, the charts and tables, we'll go into the.
Is now a good time for me to argue that short stakes aren't always what's driving up the share rate?
Oh yeah, let's go to the graph.
Yeah, wait. Okay.
Let's do it on the graph because you can argue that point right there. So go to that estimated share rate up on the top right. Ta-da! So I added some things here, Maddie.
Okay.
You, right.
All right.
So before we start touching any buttons, I'll explain. So this is where I had curated this previously just to be showing 2 years worth of data. So I wasn't doing the whole thing. Now, the very top bar with the dates allows you to go out as far as you want to, and you can also slide all the way out to the longest date period. And yeah, go ahead and do it. You see it shifting. Go all the way 37. So you see how flat this gets over time. The only difference in inflection is really that 29-30 period. 2029, 2030. But otherwise, it's fairly straight. I mean, grand scheme of things. Of course, you hover over, you can see that. And then if you want to look any section at a time, you could just grab the other button and move it around a little bit. On the left-hand side, and you could play with this, kind of change it however you want it to look, right? When you go in the shorter time frames, we can get to your conversation. So if you bring the latest date back down to like 22 or 23, you'd either do it by typing in that right box. It doesn't matter which way you go. Yeah, you could do that. We'll look at the steps and you can make your argument. Now notice when you change the dates, it's going to change the points on the slider anyways. You'll see that it goes down. So you could do it either way, right? I gave you too many buttons. You could really play with moving around.
Will this work?
All right. Yeah, that's fine. They're all going to be different. So what I draw the attention to for everybody is using that calculation looking forward. We do see a couple things that are true. See how in the future those steps are very flat. Looks like kind of like staircase steps. Well, that's because there are probably older, larger stakes that are going to come out at that time, and they just supersede everything around them, right? I mean, they're just big. And then it's going to take some time until the next one comes out that pushes it up. So in the future, without short stakes, the future would look fairly flat stepped, right? If people were not doing any short staking at all, because you're always waiting for this older stake to come up, and then it would hit that number, and then it would wait for the next one, right? And it never goes down, so if it doesn't go up, it's going to be flat, right? No change. But then if you look in the past from where we are today and what we're projecting for the next month, you don't see flat steps. And so my hypothesis, which I haven't proven out with math, but just from observation, is that in the beginning, it all looked like steps like this. But because we're doing these short stakes that start after a new high gets made in the T-share rate, it's now living off of that new T-share rate. And it's always going to make sure, the system's always going to make sure that stake, when it goes through the new share rate calculation, cannot get the same number of T-shares. And so in that period of time that would have been flat, instead of it being flat, it ends up being a upwards kind of a sloping change. And the more stakes are taking place in that period, the more that gets filled in. Right. And so you can kind of see it in practice behind us that we're in a pretty good range. And so the argument on the one side is that doing these little stakes like this is beneficial for the system because it drives the price up, and potentially beneficial for, in terms of HEX, beneficial for the stakers who already exist, right? That's one argument for these, doing these short stakes. And then Maddie, your question and argument is, or thought is?
So at first I was like, yeah, big stakes are the ones that move the share price. And we even heard Richard explain it like that. And then he actually did a famous like retraction where he said, well, of course, it's not just the highest ROI in the system that it's ever seen that moves the share rate up, because otherwise we would have seen during big payday that a new, when the OA staked and there was 99% of all coins were staked, that would have that could have made a new share rate that would not be increased for a long time. So it's so that's true, right? That it is not just the highest ROI stakes that make the share rate go up, right? Small stakes can move the share rate up now, right?
Yeah, and probably in maybe one way to look at it, on the backs of previous large stakes and small stakes that have already reset the new bounds. Now, what's funny about this is we probably go on and on about it. Yeah, because I could discuss it for a while. And other people have lots of questions about it. But here's the thing. You go to the blockchain, it's transparent. The transaction's there. People went through your class. They go click on the transaction, go look at it. You don't have to believe me. I mean, those are that's really what's happening.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are the transactions that emit the change. So, however it's happening, it's happening.
That's so cool. I never knew that there were like big fat stakes from the past that really ratcheted up. And then in between those are little baby stakes that actually bring it up just a little, and it slowly curves up. And another fat one comes in. That's cool. This is a cool way to think about it.
Yeah, I think when we get to the end of the year and if we look backwards and you'll say we still have this up and you look at the red line, all those flat spots will be gone. There won't be any flat spots. It'll look like the past, except it'll be all the way up, because there's not enough happening on a daily basis, that you're going to see just an upward spike like that.
Yeah, because there are still days where it barely changes or doesn't change, right? Like there's some of those, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I cut off the 36 on the chart because I don't have any data yet that tells me what stakes will fill that in. So you actually get to a point where it just becomes flat in my calculation, not in real life, because in real life, when we finally get up that far, there will be stakes that are going to be made and overlaid on it. But right at the moment, I just don't have enough good data.
Yeah, you can't simulate those stakes because they don't exist yet, right? Yep, I gotcha. Makes sense.
And now the next step is to simulate the stakes, right? Or one of the next steps. But that's going to be some more work.
Yes, yeah, because I've argued that for a really, really long time that you could know, I think because you could know if all the HEX got staked, you could know the maximum number of TShares that could exist, and that number decreases every day.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You could also calculate for each point in time what we know so far, and that would I think that would add to the future market supply, not just the future market supply of HEX, but the future price of TShares. Even though that changes every day, we can already see what's going to happen when you're at 2025 and what the kind of the minimum share rate should be, or the maximum.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about that. This is actionable intelligence, right? So At first, I was like, man, I'm not sure what I figured out here. But I do know this. If you have a need to stake and you're going to stake right now in terms of HEX and stake. Just stake right now. Do your entire ladder. Do it, because you're never going to get a better price. All right. However, if you don't have the cash flow, you don't have the dry powder, and it's going to take you some time to do it, come back and look at a chart like this, and a little harder to see on this scale, but we can see the big steps. So try to get them in before a big step. You know, get 3% more buying power. Don't wait until afterwards. Get it before if you can. And then take it a step further, and somebody else recommend this too as well, is that when you're looking at ending stakes, if you're building a ladder now, not always useful to you because maybe you're not looking at a time frame for it or whatnot. But let's say we are going to go out, several years. And Maddie, why don't you move the scale out like 25 for both of them? Just slide them out there and give us just a range, so it gives us some steps. This is good enough. So let's say I think that's like August of 25 at the bottom there. It's, on my screen's a little hard to see.
May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2020.
Cinco de Mayo. All right. So if you're thinking about staking out into 25, whatever your ladder is, maybe it's a yearly ladder or 6-month ladder, consider maybe having it end a week before when one of these big jumps is going to happen. So that if you are coming out with it, this is just one way to use this data, and you have other data, you can get back in before a big jump. All right. I mean, why not try to have it come out? Now, we know that things are going to change and they'll get overlaid on top of this, but with the knowledge we have today, I'd rather have it come out, a couple days before so I can do any restaking than have it come out after. So those are some ways that this is actionable, depending on how much you tend to or want to plan your stakes.
I think it's useful. I think that's a good strategy. Absolutely. I didn't even think about that for as far as, let's just pretend you're just taking your yield and then you're restaking just your principal to give yourself a couple days before a big bump. Yeah, you get to pull. You get to potentially sell your yield before that big stake even comes out, before they can sell, and then you're restaked at the same T-share price. That's a great strategy. Very useful.
Yeah, let's build on that for a second. Listen, everybody can do whatever the hell they want to do. This is decentralized, right? However, right, in my head, maybe in your head, I think you've heard you just say it. I know Maddie said this before. The best HEX life and HEX ladder is one where I never sell my principal. That's the best one, right? That's the best future. I only skim a little bit off the top. And if that's true, and we get there, and we are there, David, that's exactly how I'd want to use it for that purpose. I want to keep myself in the game. I only want to be able to take what I need off the top and just keep restaking. Never sell the base asset if I can do it.
Bingo. Because cash flow is king, and HEX is it produces its own yield.
That's it, man.
So yeah, you don't want to give up the golden goose.
Yeah, that's one way to go after it. So Maddie, this one I gave all sorts of buttons for, and we're going to see some more of these buttons. So also look on the bottom and the top on the left-hand side. You want to make this thing look funky? Have at it. Move that thing around, change the scale. It'll move for you. And this way people can kind of evaluate it. Sometimes it's hard with the flat lines to see what's there, but it's a couple different ways to change it. I'm fooling around with the visuals to see what might work best.
And just get nerdy for a quick second. I couldn't help but notice at the top the URL. This is powered by Microsoft Power BI. So
Power BI.
You built this using like Microsoft's platform.
Yeah.
As like an app. Cool.
Yeah. So that's a good question. Maybe there's someone who's interested in this, right? You know how to get data from the blockchain, right? So my version of getting data from the blockchain is go through Web3, which connects to maybe a service or somebody's node, run my own node, maybe use some API endpoints, or use API endpoints off the Graphel, right? Or the subgraph. It's kind of like my understanding how things are and different ways all that stuff's used. So yeah, when I'm going after the data here, I'm looking for something. It's non-transactional, right? I'm not depending on any of this to do anything on Web3, right? Because it's not a DApp in that way. So it opens up the door for me to do some information gathering through like Subgraph. And that's why I call out Kodiak, man, and his work. I asked him today, man, I want to be an intern. I gotta learn some stuff about how he builds the stuff that he does. And I'm very thankful to him because he's been real helpful. So this information is coming down through Subgraph, and then you have to worry about where you're going to put it.
Yeah, in a database of some kind, right?
And so and that led me into, hey, do I go free or do I do local, or do I do a service? And I didn't worry about it in the past, but nowadays, I don't want to pay $5,000 or $10,000 for a database, per year. You know how it seems like it's a little deal, but it ends up being a lot of money to store it.
Yes.
But with Microsoft BI, I can use it as a Microsoft tool. Relatively low price to have this type of service on a monthly basis. It has a built-in database. So the long story short is I've used Power BI in the past for work, and it has some pretty good world-class visuals, right? Because I didn't have to make all this stuff. Like if I was doing HTML, I have to figure out what I was going to be using for HTML, and whether somebody had something built and I was using a plugin or something. But this is all built in. And so I just have to ingest the data. And I'm real hopeful. Another question for people in general. What I'm real hopeful for is perhaps I can get this data model published into a data mart to provide yet another way for people just to simply connect up and get more data, one way or another, because having more ways to get transparent data is probably good.
Absolutely. Yeah. The democracy of information is great. Yeah.
Did I answer that question correctly for you?
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I know it's on the nerdy side, and not not all the viewers are interested in that. But I want to know how it's running behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I'll probably end up with 1,000 emails now or DMs. You won't want to do it, but all of the information I'm getting, you could go into your simple Excel database and get this information. I mean, excuse me, Excel app. Just go to your own XLS. You can go get all this data. Took me a while. That was the longest thing for me to figure out, is how I could do it. Because I found like one reference on the internet from some guy in like Bulgaria or something, that had half an answer to my question. And it took me a while to piece it together. Now looking backwards, like, no duh, right? I mean, just posting for JSON, but it wasn't like evident to me how I could get it in. And so now I got it in. So the real geeky people, nerds, go ahead and contact me. We can figure stuff out. But I'd like to make, if we can do it, it would be great to have some sort of relational database that people would have access to and could build their own things on their own time in their own way. And doesn't matter the tool, as long as they get the connection. But there's I think I mentioned this to Maddie a little bit. One of the concerns I have about data and stuff like this, you don't want to give people bad data, right? And then like I can give people information, but then if I make a mistake, now they did something with it that maybe is bad for them, or usually worst case is people misinterpret the information, right? But then that goes right back to, hey, listen, you're all self-sovereign, do what you want, right? It's up to you to figure it out. But anyways, those are the things that go through my head,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So what else have we not checked out? I guess would be.
Man. So I mean, how much time do you have?
The next segment I think we should do is getting David's reaction to what the share price could be in at the end of this time scale. So hopefully he didn't cheat and look already. But David, what is your reaction to one T-share costing 129,000 HEX in 2036?
Oh, that's crazy, man.
Will you be willing to pay that, sir?
I mean, maybe my grandkids. Like, yeah, I don't know. I like to be in the under 30 at this point. Under 30K for a T-share. That's a bargain, right?
You
I'm
got a couple
spoiled, though.
weeks. You got a couple more weeks. Got to
Couple
get
more weeks
started.
till we hit 30K. Yeah.
You
I,
got to get started.
I remember when it was 10K and then 15K and 20K.
I
Oh
know.
yeah.
I have a pretty strong reaction to it, Maddie. I know. I think that number's wrong.
You think
It
it's
might
too
be.
low?
It might be wrong by a factor of 10. Let's say.
Up or
What?
down.
That's I'm joking about that number, but the other models that I've seen are anywhere from 20% to like 300% higher than that. You know, like
Yeah,
3x higher
So you have the most conservative model. It seems.
that I've seen so far. Besides it going down, which you can't. Well, I guess I could sort of, but well, I guess it's stay flat. But
Wow. So, wow. Could be anywhere from 130 to
well,
360, half a million. Like,
yeah, well,
who knows?
pick a date, man. I mean, I'm thinking this is the FOMO part that you said. You know, you mentioned it before. I'm like, I just got to stop staking. You know, I got too much going on, and then I'm looking. I'm like, God damn it! The end of 23, it's going to be over 30,000. I'm getting my stakes in now, right? And you know what? I'm not even gonna stake anything that comes out next year because then I'm gonna have to pay more. You know, it really is a self-feeding delirium.
Yeah,
know?
this fosters T-share FOMO.
It does, but it drives me nuts.
And that, you know, that's the thing is as T-shares become more and more deflation, or as it becomes more obvious that they're more deflationary, as people try to rebuy their T-shares with, you know, what did you say the number of big payday bonuses that are left in the system are?
It's like 60%, right?
60% are still active, or
yeah, I'll look at it real quick. Hold on.
Yeah,
I pull it up.
So,
As of earlier today, we still had 59.34% that were open. So about 40% of them closed, but the number really begins to go down over time pretty fast here.
So yeah, people who have plans to rebuy their T-shares are going to realize at some point that it's a losing battle, and that the best way to do it is to, you know, have that FOMO and to staking longer than average than you think the average is going to be when your stake comes out is really the only way to avoid the inflation of the system, and for you to not be diluted in how many shares you have of future compound interest. Look, compound interest curves, you know, they start off going up a little bit, and then at the end they go up a lot. And that's what we're seeing here. That's what HEX is. It's a way to do compound interest on the blockchain. And so we don't know what the US dollar price is going to be, but we know how people can maintain their share of the shares of future compound interest going forward is by rebuying T-shares and recognizing that the price will become more and more of your principal and your interest and your big payday bonus the longer you wait.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and I think I mentioned you calculation. I'm thinking 26, 28, maybe sooner, maybe a little bit later, but right around that time, the first stakes will come out that even if they restaked Quattro Cinco, they can't get the same number of T-shares.
Can we say that again?
So there will come a time where stakes will come out, and no matter what you do with them, you know, if you have the same quantity of HEX, you can't go out any longer, right? So you go out an extra year, you get more T-shares, maybe you go an extra 5 years, you get more T-shares. So you can go out 15 more years. There is a time where stakes start to expire. Not all stakes, and it has to do with when, but the earliest stakes that we did, where it doesn't matter what you do with them, you cannot restake them and get the same number of T-shares. because you have the upper limit of the Quattro Cinco.
Yes, and that's around, like, what did you say, 26?
Yeah, 26, 27, maybe as late as 28. You have to remember all this on this curve changes based on the amount of payout we get per day, and so
just to clarify, you're saying 2028 or 28K hex per T-share?
Oh, no, 2028. I'm sorry, 20.
Okay,
like between
year.
2026 and 2028.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's like a couple months away. I'm like, guys, we gotta start freaking out. Like, we don't have time.
No, and the thing is, it's another one of those like fun nerd trivia facts that doesn't matter to anybody except the owner of that stake, and because it doesn't happen to all stakes all the time, right? It's all very much having to do with when they were staked, but it's going to be it's a milestone event because we have not. It's like big payday. There's only one big payday, right? There will only be the first stake that will be the first stake that cannot be restaked for more TShares. I mean, there'll only be one, and then after that, there'll just be many, that'll come up that way, and then a bunch that won't, right? Because it has to do with, again, how long they've been cooking and what's going on with them. But that'll be the future. Once we get to that point, there'll be a bunch that won't be able to do it. But that also ensures redistribution, right? Meat on the bone.
Yes.
If I'm not going to be polite enough to turn over my inventory, then the system will help me turn over the inventory. I can only live here so long before I have to continue to reinvest.
And it's, if you want to value your wealth in HEX compound interest, the best way to think about it is not the number of HEX you have. It's not even the number of TShares that you have, but it is the ratio of the number of TShares that you have versus the total number of TShares that exist. And then you can supercharge that even more by factoring in how long those TShares will exist for you and model how fast everybody else's are going to drop off. So for example, if the average stake length right now is 6.5 years, that means that at the 6.5 year mark, half of the TShares will have been destroyed. And if the TShare rate is, 5 times what it was, where does that put us? 2020. Yeah, about 5 times. Then that many fewer TShares, I think, are going to be created. You're gonna have a larger share of the total TShare pool, which that's kind of what StakerApp is already measuring with the league system, is what percentage of the total number of shares do you have, and so that's one way to, like, no matter what the TShare rate is, if you can maintain your ratio there, that's something that can happen even after this 2026 event, where you can no longer rebuy the same number of TShares, even if you put in all your principal and all your interest and your big payday money.
Yeah, and be clear about that too. There's only certain stakes that applies to, right? So it's not all stakes. It really, it's an individual calculation again. So, but yeah, it'll be the first ones that'll happen. Because I don't want people freaking out, right? This is what I mean about me putting out bad information. I'll give you a range of 2 years that the first one will happen. We'll have to monitor and see what happens with that.
Well, and I think too, there are people who are, they're cashing out a lot now, more than they need to live off of, and then they're kind of thinking to themselves, well, I mean, people, one of the cool things about HEX is you only have to have the moment of clarity where you stake and then wait for the data rollover. And then, then you have all that time to decide how valuable HEX is to you, how valuable shares are. And some people are going to create opportunities to, because they're going to dump all their HEX, and other people, they want to maintain their spot in the system. And if you want to maintain your spot in the system, then you know, that's a whole nother thing. But you know, the other thing that happened today that is kind of a big deal isn't today the day when HEX went over 100,000 current stakers.
Yes, it is. Huh?
We're making history.
Yeah, good job, everybody out there. I knew you could do it.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah,
I knew you could do it.
yeah, that's awesome. That's great. It's growing. Hopefully,
And
eventually
that was
it'll
actually pretty fast, man. It was like 800 because that's not
be-
that's
yeah,
not stakes, that's stakers.
yeah, but individual wallets that have at least one stake, right? I think that's the technical criteria. And today is Hex Day 975. So not bad. 100,000 wallets staking in under 1,000 days. So what's that? At least 10 a day have joined.
100 a day.
Oh, yep. Sorry, 100 a day. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Future Us here has a comment. A TShare chasing is naive and pointless. Cash out the HEX yield amount or part thereof, then restake all the remaining HEX. The original principle. Number of TShares you get is meaningless. Thank you for weighing in. I obviously really respect his opinion. And I think he knows the HEX system better than maybe almost anybody on earth, because he read through every line of code and knew what it meant. And then you also made a note here of, I guess, part of how things are calculated using the terminology in the contract, in the HEX smart contract. If the figure here is greater than the current share rate, then update the share rate to this new figure. So the equation's on the screen there.
Yeah. Thank you, Future Us.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because that's the math on it, and sometimes people argue. You know,
They argue against
Who?
the math equation. That's
Who's
immutable.
arguing?
not you guys. I'm just saying.
I'm talking about
You know,
people in chat, like
yeah, oh,
Telegram.
Yeah. There's always
Yeah.
somebody. That's not true. Richard told me.
It's like, what? This is like
Say,
literal locked immutable code. Like it's right there.
Yeah, but Richard said, come on. I heard him on a stream. He said it.
Use hexsearch.io to prove that's what Richard said. Is what I would tell those people.
That's right.
If Future Us also adds, obviously though, you always want to buy as many TShares as you can at the time you have the dry powder, and as soon as possible, as in any compounding system.
Absolutely. Second best time. The second best time is when you get it, when you have it, dry powder. If you don't have dry powder, go to step 2. Get dry powder. Right.
How long do you guys think it'll take for us to reach 200K stakers?
Half the time.
I like that. I like that.
Maybe that's Chrispy man's law. Maybe that'll be like Moore's law. Except Chrispy man said it first.
I better trademark that. Why don't we? Hey, I'll throw something else out to you. So while we have it up here, if you go to charts and tables for me, let's go look and see what that looks like. Let's go look and see. Let's go charts and tables. Go to the monstrosity down there at the bottom on the left. That one, visualize HEX daily stats. It may take a second to load. I don't know if this will survive. I'll need a lot of feedback. But you want to know what we talk about, stakers, right? Find the staker one. Should be down towards the left-hand side or something.
Current
bottom
staker.
left, current stakers, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a little box that'll open up towards the top right. Click on that, open up the full scale mode, focus mode. Oop. Yeah, click off that again. Just click off to the side or something. Maybe it's there. It is. See the shit right there. There it is. Get it. There you go. All right. So here you go. You tell me what it looks like. Looks to me like we're going up at a faster rate. So use your little button on the bottom, drag that date around if you want. Let's look and see how fast it's going. I didn't put a measurement in there for percentage, but it looks pretty flat in the past, right? So
Yeah.
so the rate's been markedly different, 21 to 22. Seems like we're at a rate. We'll probably draw that on a chart, figure out where we're going to be another year, 2 years. I mean, this isn't trading view, so we can't exactly, throw a measure on there and say that it, in a year it went from what 70. You can hover over it and see what it is, 100K, 73 to 100K.
Since the beginning of the year.
Since the beginning of the year, January. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you can see the spike for the big payday, right? Is that 30K where a bunch of people staked for just a couple days and then they undid their stakes right after?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Now we do have to give a little bit of a nod to, or not a little bit, we give a nod to Hadron, right? And Alex's crew over there, because they are part of the numbers, right? So definitely after January this year, we started seeing many more of these individual stakes, which have individual addresses. And I'm not sure that these metrics can pick up that somebody did 10 HSIs and they're one person versus the other. So that's a little bit of thing there. So one of the reasons you might be seeing some of the spike and change. But even so, we did see when it kicked off, you can see that big jump up, but then it kind of went back to similar slope as prior to that time. So we, if you were looking at a chart, probably wouldn't be too far off, right? To say we'll go up pretty fast. So what I tried to do with these panels, Maddie, a little cumbersome at the moment, but I wanted to make them available to people. I took the HEX daily stats info and I made individual charts out of them. And so if you drag up here on the top, you know how we have that top bar, they'll all change for you and show you the time frame. So you maybe if there's some sort of correlation, we can find it. I haven't played around with it enough, but kind of give you an idea what's happening with the different ones. And then if you go to focus mode on any of them, you can go look at them. Now that you know what that little focus button is.
Yeah. What happens here? 510.
Yeah, that was a bit. That wasn't that like a giant stake came out.
Okay. Yeah,
and
billion or whatever.
Yeah, so you can go down into the details of that through the other panels and try to find out what it was, because now that we know that those ended and what their estimated payouts are, we can go look at that specific time frame and see.
Sweet.
So I probably gave you an opportunity to waste many hours. So have fun.
Yeah, this is gold, man. There's a lot of clicking and a lot of buttons and a lot of graphs and charts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like the stakers. You know what I like even more is the holders. Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I like stakers better, but holding's not a bad thing. It just means more people getting acclimated
down at the bottom
to the
right.
system. Yeah. Bottom right. I mean, that's pretty cool.
So this is unique addresses that hold HEX?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay.
Of how that's calculated. That actually have a balance. That's my understanding, anyways, of it.
Wow. That one's up to over 300K. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so I didn't make this data. So this is actually, you go to the HEX daily stats and you see the little chart. This is coming directly from that chart.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm trying to sync it. I even tried to use the same titles to be able to do it. I was getting kind of fatigued trying to go back and forth, between all these things and try to remember what they look like. And then I'm copy pasting one page and putting next to the other to go, oh, it go change at the same time. Or then I try to put them together and the scale was all wrong. That kind of stuff.
Oh, like to do like an overlay?
Yeah. And I just because I want to know when current holders are going up, what's happening with stakers? Are they both going up at the same time? And so anyways, maybe we'll develop some other stuff later.
Because you look for correlations to see if maybe one is influencing the other. Do they follow each other or separate? Yeah.
Yeah. I got to go get me a chart guy, somebody who can do that better than me.
And I'll be the guy who helps clean up the data, like removing this situation here where somebody sent, what was it, 100 hex to 100,000 wallets.
Mhm.
That the data would, if when you clean up data like this from artifacts, then it shows more about what people are really doing when you take out all those low outliers. Because how many people at that time were really buying only 100 hex, right? It was
Yeah.
less than a penny or something.
Yeah, could you even buy? Well, I guess you could technically, but it would
Yeah.
be like a fraction of a penny. Like, why would you even do that transaction?
It was a roll up, man.
Which is cool, and somebody should get a trophy for that for sure. It's making history. It's doing bragging rights. It's like, did Vitalik use roll-ups like that? Did anybody else do it in a way that could increase people's awareness and stuff about HEX? And so I think it was a net positive. It just it kind of obscures our ability to see how many people are really in it by their own volition or by their own action.
Maybe I think a filter on this that would remove any wallets that hold like less than 1,000 hex. Maybe that would help kind of clean it up a little.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of different techniques you could use for it.
Is it possible to apply for the user at home who's using this to apply filters or do anything?
Only if they're licensed. Well, that's not accurate. I'll show you one where we did it. I mean, full-fledged get in and do it. They could be licensed and do it. In fact, that's what I was kind of referring to before, is maybe we there's several people I've already met that come out of the woodwork that have used Power BI before, that are in the community. And it's a cloud app, so with the licensing, somebody can get in and use it, and they could do that type of stuff. When we go on the other pages, I'll show you. Well, actually, even on this page, like the dates up there, I said put the filter there, so the filters are right.
Oh, gotcha.
And so that's actually a filter. And when we go look at stakes and that type of stuff, you can do addresses and dates, and there's different things that could be done. But yeah,
Cool.
Maddie, like I said, you can get lost on this one. This is like,
I will.
you can almost take this page and put it on one of the Pulse game sites, and it's just a game. You earn Pulse by going through the charts, right?
Yes.
It's like an erector set. Let's move that date back and forth and see what's moving.
I'm getting paid every minute of every day by my HEX stakes. So
me too.
How I choose to spend my time is well rewarded, I guess.
So people can go in here and fool around, click on these different things. Undertaker. I gotta not look at the chat. Go to if you don't mind, if you just hit a couple panels on the left, do the HEX staking data. We won't go into anything unless somebody wants to see something. You guys want to see it. But if you go to HEX staking data, I can just describe for a moment what's there. So these are some different tables you can go in. You can do that type of stuff, David, where you can do some filtering in here. The estimated monthly payouts just shows, like, from now into the future what I think the payouts will be on a monthly basis. And then people can actually look at that. And it's a chart somewhere else that they can go to. And so you can pick a year. You could look at your own addresses. You could look at other people's addresses. And from this, you can see the August number is very high at the moment. It's like 5 billion. And then as you hit control, you can hit multiples too. Yeah, hit control click.
On a Mac, maybe it's command. Yep.
You see how that is? So like if I came in here with my stakes or with my addresses and put them in, I could like get a whole list, of all my ending months, and at least based on my current model of payouts, come see what the payouts are going to be. This is kind of the genesis of being able to figure out what days, months will be the least amount of HEX coming out.
Because you have every address in here.
Every stake is in there. Yeah.
That's right. Sweet.
I don't know who you are, but I got every one of them.
And you're
This
not
is
trying
cool.
to know, is that right?
No, I'm not I couldn't keep track of anything anyways, but I don't.
You're not logging people's IP addresses alongside their address searches. Cool.
Right, so there's that one. And if you go, if you just hit the little arrow button on the bottom that goes back. OpenStakes, same type of thing, except it's more like our OpenStakes for go.hex.com. So people can come in and do the same type of stuff. And of course, you can sort any of these, right? And click them and whatnot. You might even be able to exclude them by clicking, right-clicking on a line. If you just don't like one of them, you might be able to exclude it. So I don't like you anymore. Make it go away.
Yeah.
So you can do some different things, and then reset it if you wanted to reset it by right-clicking again.
Whoa, that's a 250 million hex stake for 5555.
I know. I wish that was my stake.
Jeez, me too. Oh, it makes my million one look puny. Wow, 1100% estimated ROI. That's just the yield, right? That doesn't no price appreciation.
Yeah.
That is awesome. This is cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I could spend all day on this. So let's go back one more time. A little brown button there. So then, if you wanted to, you could go look at penalized. And also look at the unclaimed hex and good accounted hex that's out there. Now, a lot of this could all be done on the same page, but it just becomes so much information on one page to be able to kind of like digest it. So people have suggestions, better presentation. Well, I can look at that, kind of change it up. In the past, I think I was more worried about good accounted stakes and stakes that were expiring in the past than I am today. The amount that's out there, we look at the monthlies and even the dailies, you see so much hex coming out on a regular basis. There's not much risk in my head, doesn't appear to be that much risk to having 2 billion hex that's out in people's wallets. That's been good accounted. So the worst that could happen is they come back and end their stakes and they get their hex. More likely, they're not all coming back on the same day. And even if they did, it's 2 billion hex, and we got lots more hex than that going on. So I rate this as low risk. Same thing with the expiring stakes. Some really good actors or not so good actors, it's been in your opinion. I don't know if you've been seeing it, but people good accountant stakes, like they're going out of style. They're picking the fruit before it's ripe. But they can do that. Let's say we're all part of the community. Anybody wants to do it can go good account of stake. They are. And so when you look at the good accounted, the bleeding stakes that are out there, very few of them. In fact, Maddie, the other day, I think I showed you a stake, or we were talking about it, or I did it on one of the other streams. Somebody good accounted that baby. I don't know who did it. I don't know if it was the owner. 37 million good accounted, but they gave the community 3-4 million in penalties. It was good in between,
Yeah, because I've heard arguments for both. I've heard arguments that people think you should just let it bleed fully and then go to count it to harvest it all, or some people say go to count it immediately to get those TShares out of the system. So I don't know I don't know the right answer personally. I've never really done the math deep down, but
yeah,
I can see both.
Yeah, listen, you know what? You do what you want to do. I probably lean towards wait myself, because then for the maximum amount of time, you get the maximum, payout as penalties and the most minimal risk. But I'm pretty conservative, so that's probably not necessary. I mean, by that logic, I would not good account the away stakes. And when I absolutely don't feel like the OA is a risk, right? So, where's it go? But here's the good thing. I don't have to worry about it anymore because somebody else took care of it. Somebody else made the decision. So all we could do is rail at the sky, like don't get to count those stakes. Who are you talking to? Nobody's listening.
I mean, thousands of people watch this show, and they're typically the more advanced users who stuck around. Because if you're brand new and you're watching the show, you're probably super lost. So, you know,
Oh yeah,
if there was ever a time and a place to have a debate, like other than I guess on Richard's channel, which would have higher viewership, like, but then it would also have like the more new people who would figure out how to do it. So like this is the place here and now to make the argument either way on whether it makes more mathematical sense to not end. And of course, people can do whatever they want to do. And
right. I see future us asking the question in chat too. I do bow my head to that future us. It's a topic I've spent way too much time on that I don't think that's valuable. Because I mean, it's a good conversation to have, and maybe in the future become valuable. But again, which the magnitude of the decision compared to the engine is like, you know. I'm worried about, if I'm discussing this, I'm worried about pebbles when we got boulders, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll make the case then to even discuss it. So 100% of people who are staked, who control 100% of the future hex that gets created, they're all bored and they're sitting around waiting for their stakes to come out. And if we don't give them fun things to talk about and new content, then they're going to go out there and dump the hex price until it's got a bunch of zeros in front of it again. And, so maybe there's a case that still, covering things that people haven't covered well, or having the data to back up our claims. Like, I want to know, like, what strategy is better. And, maybe one way we could take it is like, I recently ran my first good accounting action on someone else's wallet. And it wasn't just anybody. It was who I'm calling the Pulse Longevity Whale. This is somebody who donated $150,000 to the Aubrey de Grey legal fund that's officially controlled by Concerned Longevity Donors. And that's a big deal to me. This person also gave $10 million to the longevity cause, which, like, that's super cool. And so when I was teaching my chain analysis class, I was like, oh, it'd be great for me to just like look at this wallet. I'm not going to like trace every transaction they ever did, but I was just curious, like, is this person a hexakin? Did they sacrifice for PulseChain from the same address? And so I'm looking into it, and I realized that the only hex stakes they have is starting to bleed out. And it was like, I was going to send them an NFT to thank them for donating to the longevity thing. But instead I was like, well, I could do that. Plus I could good account these 4 stakes. That's when I realized that I was misreading the blockchain, and really only one of them hadn't been ended yet. So I was able to end that one. And that's, it had bled out like 80%. So that's $7,000 or something at today's prices that I was able to save for that person as a thank you to some, for them donating to something I cared about. So that the calculus on that was pretty easy. I also wanted to like have the bragging rights of helping that person out, because it's a fun story about, people giving and getting back something in return that, digital thank you. But I think that I think it's also super interesting to debate whether it should be done for a stranger that you don't know. Now, I've heard the argument that some people are out there ending these stakes because they think that the person, when they come back, might pay them back. It might be like they could get some sort of reward for it.
Yeah. I thought that once, but then I forgot. Yeah.
Okay. If Future Us and I realized that it's very hard to tell on the blockchain who did it if you don't know if you don't have a suspect.
Well, and which is why a lot of these are in this situation in the first place, because unless you understood the blockchain, you go, look, you don't even know sometimes you have these sticks.
Yes. Yeah. Now, do we know how many of these are associated with Bitcoin?
How many of the good accounted ones are associated with it? I probably can get that pretty quickly. Well, at least a number pretty quickly, because you do see quite a few that were good accounted because they were free claims. And because they were free claimed, a lot of people don't understand what happened during that period. I free claimed my Bitcoin, which meant I signed my address, which sent a signal that said, I own this account, or, with whatever amount of Bitcoin. And so then I was allocated a allotment of HEX. When that happened, I could then go claim my Bitcoin. I'm probably using the wrong words. I don't remember exactly how the panel was set up at the time. But when I did that, 10% of it went liquid into my wallet, right? The rest of it didn't appear anywhere. It only appeared if I went to, this is my interpretation again, when I went to the go.hex.com site, and it would allow me to stake it. But it wasn't a quantity that was in my wallet. All right. So if I got 100,000 as a bonus, 10,000 showed up liquid, 90,000 was on the contract, and only when looking through the contract's sunglasses could I see it. If I never went to the panel to go stake, I didn't know it was there. Of course, I was staking it, right? But I mean, other people didn't do that. So what did they do? They do what everybody does in Ethereum. Went to their wallet. Oh, I got my 10%. Oh, this is my HEX. I didn't listen to what Richard said, whatever. And they sent their HEX out, or they just ignored it and left. And they left like behind thousands of stakes that are just abandoned that were auto staked. And then anyways, those, the larger one of those make up some of these numbers that are here. And it's great forensic activity, homework for your class.
Yes. Yeah,
We'll
for the
figure this
201
stuff out.
class, that is. That doesn't exist yet, but will someday.
Well, you know how I figured it out? Certainly somebody else knows about this. A lot of people probably know how it was done. I figured this out because I was trying to download my damn transactions, and my numbers would never match. I only had, for Christ's sakes, I only had one BTC claim, but my numbers were off all the time. And I couldn't figure out why. It was because doesn't appear on the blockchain the way all the other numbers are. Like if you do the transactions, like how much HEX did I have, and here's the staking transaction. I always was missing HEX.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
that's
why a lot of these folks may never come back, which is an argument for, in my mind, for good accounting. So when I look at a stake, and I see there's a substantial amount of HEX there, I would consider good accounting it if it's an auto stake and there's been no action on that account since launch. And the reason I would consider that is because it looks like the guy hasn't been back in 2 years, 3 years, probably never coming back. So what happens? I run the good accounting, the penalty gets distributed out to the rest of us. So our payout's high for that day, or higher for that day. And then my APY goes up just a little bit because those stakes are taken out of the pool. And then over enough time, because I'm a staker, I'll earn enough to overwhelm whatever was left in the guy's wallet anyways, even if he comes back. So that's one viewpoint for why I would do it.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the thinking that it's good or bad to end a stake, let's say, that is bleeding out? It's a big one. Doesn't have to be Bitcoin free claim related.
I think it's really, you're really deciding, between penalty now, penalty later, scarcity. Scarcity is if you actually good account it for the person, it becomes scarce if they never come back. But if you let it completely burn before it's good accounted at the end, all of that goes out at some point in the future. But again, I think number wise, you know, a lot of the stakes we're talking about, it doesn't really have much effect on the overall system.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, people. And then what about John Wick doing the OA stake? What's the thinking there? That it's decreasing the total number of shares, so the payout is higher because the T-share pool is lower. But if it's expired, it's not still getting paid out. It's not still getting interest, is it?
Yeah, well, that's another misunderstanding people have. We have a lot of misunderstandings about penalties and whatnot when we get in the system. When you stake and you have a T-share, as long as that stake is not ended or good accounted, that T-share takes up some little bit of inflation. And so if you leave it expiring, it's eating it up over time. So what that means is whatever portion of the overall pool just gets minted. It doesn't actually get minted, gets allocated out into nothingness. So you have one stake for one T-share. I have one stake for one T-share. While we're both staked, we're both getting 50%, right? My end date comes up. I don't end. You're still getting 50%, but my 50% just disappears somewhere. I don't get any more because I'm past my date, but it still gets allocated until somebody pulls that out of the pool.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the argument. Get the T-shares out of the pool, APY goes up.
Okay. Because there might be more stakers in the future you have to split it up with too.
Yeah, that's possible. That's a possibility as well.
Oh, we got a correct from future us. Nice. Falcon Crypto, thanks for the $5 super chat, and thanks to the people who did super chats earlier. I saw a $20 super chat from Jerry Oaksmith. Thank you, Jerry. And $9.99 super chat from Hexiest Man in the World. Falcon Crypto is asking, what is the best approach for compiling every buy and sell transaction for Hex since inception, or maybe every single transaction ever?
Well, depends on what you mean by best, but if you know, I'm not the expert in this area. I think Dave would probably have a better answer, but I think running a node or getting a subscription to a node probably is your best way to get access to all transactions that ever occurred on the blockchain. But if you weren't going to go in that direction, probably next thing is run your own database, pull data through API endpoints and add it there, or just subscribe to a service. It really depends on what the purpose is, you know.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I would probably look at a service like QuickNode or Infura, because they've already done all the back end work. You know, you can subscribe to those guys for probably like $15 a month, $20 a month, and then you connect to their archive nodes and their database servers, and who knows what other kind of filtering technology and services they offer. So there are companies who literally offer it as a cheap service versus you could do it at home. You could build your own Ethereum node, download the blockchain, export it to a database, and you know, you could build it yourself, but you don't have to.
Cool.
What else you got, Maddie? We answer the good accounting question enough, do you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean,
yeah.
I
mean, yeah.
Just to clarify it, then maybe. So the ultimate play is let a stake bleed out till it's 100%, and then do the good accounting to flush out the T-shares out of the system, which frees it up for everybody. You know, kind of reduces the pool. So you're maximizing the payout to the stakers, right? And none of the HEX goes to the person who forgot about it, and then we clear the T-shares. So,
yep.
So basically, if you filter like this chart and then go by if you look at all the really, really big stakes that are 100% past, you know, I forget how many weeks it is, but they've got nothing left. Those are probably the ones to start targeting for good accounting.
Dude, they're already gone.
Oh, are there there's none at
Yeah.
100% bleeding, basically?
Yeah. Hey, Matty, go over to expired stakes. I'll show you what I mean. This is why I started by saying I used to think it was a big deal. Go to unclaimed HEX. Unclaimed. I used to think it was a big deal because when it was a lot of HEX, I was like, oh, we're gonna get those TShares. No, these are all the stakes that are expired, and there's only like what 27 or something thousand TShares. I mean, we go up sometimes in a day, half that. So these are all the stakes that are burned. You can do up at the top, you know, 100%. You can just move it all to 100% or whatever. But you see, there's just not that much out there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, less than I expected.
Yeah. Well, what's happened, David, is there's a group of people. I don't know if they're the same people or they're working independently. I was like getting all geared up. I was all excited. I was getting geared up for when the first ones would come out that were fully bled, that were big, and they're all gone. They're all been good accounted.
I know there is a Twitter handle, like a Twitter account dedicated to just finding good accounting stakes that are past due and like warning people. So there's that's a whole group of Hexicans that do that.
Yeah. And so even now when we look at this, we used to be an expiring one that was at 37 million total yield, but that one got, I think, GA'd today or ended.
Nice. All right. So people are pruning these then. All right. Good to know.
Oh yeah, man. We used to be $1 billion or more that was out here. And I kept thinking, I even have a little calculation tells me how much I'd get per T-share. But
nice.
Apparently I must not be busy. I got other things to do. But,
oh, it feels good. That's a good calculation.
No, but you know, hey, it is part of the system and it will come back. And I think the screen we're looking at today meaning though, the system's always moving. I mean, there's 20,000, 30,000 bleeding stakes, right? I mean, there's a lot. But here's the thing. I look at this as investment of the future, meat on the bone. All right. So what does that mean to me? Yeah, okay, there's a 50 hex stake. It fully burns. If somebody good account, it's gonna be 50 hex. Doesn't mean much at a nickel. Means a hell of a lot more at $100. Okay, so in the future, perhaps future stakers, when they want more yield, will just go pick the fruit, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when it makes sense and there's a break even in value, I'll go pick the fruit. Sure, 10 million makes a lot of sense to us now, but maybe 1,000 means something to somebody in the future, you know?
That's a good point. Depending on the price per hex, if it's high enough, it would. You're right. That's cool.
We're transporting in time with our DeLorean all of this hex.
That's right.
We're sending it back to the future in the form of packaged hex and expired stakes. It's going. So yeah, that's one way to look at it, right? I mean, so when we talk about meat on the bone, there's always opportunity for meat on the bone for stakers. Always. I'm not sure this was an intended consequence, but it's certainly there.
Yeah, I think it's just a little cherry on the top. We'll take it, right? Can't complain about that at all.
Yeah. And then, hey, Maddie, probably one other thing to mention or show people. Well, why you do this? So I think people are smart to figure this out, right? They'll go to HEX staking data, see some of the stuff there. Go to advanced analytics. We were already there once. We'll just look real quick. So if you wanted to, you can go look at some of the OA data. And see what's there. So these are the OA stakes, we think, allegedly. So if somebody really wants to know what's going on with the OA, we can do this. I do plan at some point do some some deep diving into this, maybe decompose these. But this is the original list from DOSBomb, and then from and the one that Gunther worked on. And so I loaded the list. We're able to sort by them. Here they are. October 22. Next one's due. And then November looks like an exciting time. So we're looking at things like monthlies, and again, we're looking at the monthlies and go, oh my God, look at all the HEX that's coming out. Probably need to start cross-referencing the OA information to that and excluding that for some of your analysis, because if I look at a day and it's like a big deal to me that 2 billion's coming out, how big of a deal is it to me if 1 billion of that is OA, right? If half of it's OA, does it mean as much to me? Probably not. So how much, I don't know, individual decisions, maybe there's some modeling somebody could do, but that's the kind of stuff that's going on.
Yeah, because I think you could make the argument that if, those billion OA coins are as good as locked anyway, right? So those can kind of be discounted from that. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, the only caveat, and I'll spread this my own little rumor mill. It has occurred to me recently that I probably should consider the OA is not bound by what I think the OA should do. So whatever the OA wants to do, the OA is going to do. And that means that in my planning, I need to, however unlikely, understand the OA can do a lot of different things. They could stake, they could not stake, they could make stakes and let other people good account them. They could emergency end stakes. Don't know. But like, Maddie was maybe a little smarter than some of us, at least verbally, by verbalizing it. I didn't see the sacrifice coming, and he got me twice. I mean, a big payday. They got me a sacrifice, second sacrifice. Man, I wasn't surprised at all. And so then I'm not going to speculate any further, but I'm just saying, the system's set up to protect itself. So don't be surprised to see different things happen in the past. Doesn't mean just because something's happened for 3 years doesn't mean it's going to happen the same way. We don't see the OA making lots of new stakes. Maybe the OA is going to make new stakes. I don't know.
It's very possible.
Yeah. I hypothesize in the future the OA, as the HEX price gets higher and higher, I expect the OA may stake.
Well, you would think at some point, right? I mean, in some of our best case, well, maybe not best case, in some of our projections, people project that number of TShares is going to go way down. Well, then TShares are going down while we're getting more inflation. It just begets more inflation, right? Because your payouts are going to end up being higher, which just means that now your APY is going up. Do we really desire? Oh, I do like the idea of 60, 70, 80% APY. But as a responsible citizen of our community, is that really what we want? Maybe not. Maybe that's not the best thing for us. Maybe something more reasonable is the best thing. How does that get it changed, right? Well, that's kind of how the flywheel works, right? Of the OA coming in and out when needed.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of because as the price of HEX goes up, and then if there was that additional inflation, it could negatively affect the price, right? More and more people minting more and more people dumping more, and then you kind of go into a negative downward spiral. So by the OA staking and taking away some of that APY off the table, it limits the amount of damage to the price that people can do.
Yep.
I mean, the OA could also stake a lot to decrease the APY so that people don't get it wrong about how, because the APY kind of sounds scammy if you're new. That's a change. That's a change in the market since HEX started. Mm-hmm. Celsius proved that 20% APY was untrustworthy. So that makes 30% or anything sound bad too. And I think that the APY isn't really explained well. Like saying that it's inflation doesn't help people like want to sign up, because then they're like, oh, it's inflation. But I still think, obviously, like those of us who are experts on HEX understand how dynamic the system is and how well it's built to, and just the record of the OA never selling a coin certainly like kind of helps the use case. Now, David, I just remembered that I came across a stream. You may have been one of the people on the stream, and I didn't get a chance to finish it, so I don't really know what was said. But were you guys at one point discussing in the past week whether the OA has ever provided liquidity?
I don't recall that conversation this week, but I have discussed it in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Or was it about Hedron liquidity versus hex pair? We might have been talking about that recently, where I thought and I didn't prove it myself. I didn't do the chain analysis, but word on the street was that the origin address provided Hedron to hex pair liquidity, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I seem to remember having looked at that at the time. But...
Now, is that what you're talking about, Maddie? Or am I misinterpreting?
I came into the stream and I didn't finish rewinding because I wanted to catch the conversation. So I'll have to go back and we can talk about it next week. So I can kind of figure out what I was hearing, because it was like jumping in the middle of a conversation. But yeah, I think that I think the best way to predict what the OA will do is based on game theory, that it won't do something that's bad for the system. I also think that it's like responsible financial behavior to not depend on the OA to like do something for you, to not sell or to sell or to, whatever your best case scenario is. You shouldn't assume that that's what will happen. I mean, the people who say, oh, maybe the OA would, reward us by staking and then emergency end staking. How would that really be rewarding us by giving us by basically giving us more that we could dump on the market? Well, I guess we couldn't dump it on the market. That would be rewarding short stakers, because they'd be able to dump the huge APY that they got faster than the people who are in the system longer. So,
but if they were short stakers, they don't have as many TShares, so they're not going to get the biggest amount. So let's say the OA had that kind of strategy that they were going to let their stakes bleed over time. Well, then us do-gooders come along and good account their stakes, so we thwart the process, right?
Stop them from bleeding out.
Yeah. Now, but you could argue that maybe more scarcity is better than more payout. And how you're rewarding people. So yeah. It's games within games, calculations in my head.
There's a particular issue that Future Us brought up once that totally blew my mind, which is that like there is some percentage that is the ideal amount of HEX to be staked so that the system pays out the best, and that it might be around what it is now, that there might be like some 12.5% like magic amount to where when you go over that, you're pushing the interest against yourself. And so like, for example, if you're the OA and you have, let's say you have 90% of the HEX in existence, some of it's staked, some of it's not, that actually about 12% or something like that is the ideal amount that you would be staking. Otherwise, you would be pushing the APY against yourself, and that's a pretty deep concept that I think also helps possibly explain the OA behavior, which would go into the calculation in the game theory of what it might do in the future. If we think that maybe that number was not arrived upon randomly, then it might be that the OA is positioned to kind of maintain the best rate for everybody especially the OA.
Right.
So yeah, this is incredible. I think that this is really great to have this data accessible. You know, the reason I became a HEX broadcaster was because CoinMarketCap was gatekeeping us, and I guess also because I got into HEX for the Bitcoin free claim, and you know, I stayed for the cool game theory and the awesome community.
Woohoo.
But you know, the more I learn about all this stuff, I really do update my worldview. And you know, which is interesting. Maybe some people would say a flip flop on things, but I really think it's just, this is what you do as an expert, is you keep progressing. For example, with like the tradable stakes, at first I thought it was going to be a big problem. Now I think it's very similar to liquid HEX, and the majority of the APY comes from adoption and USD price appreciation anyway. But I think that, you know, one area where I'm not sure I'm really on board anymore with is like how it seems like HEX tried to game the market cap system, which could be one reason why we're gate capped. Now that has positive and negatives to it, right? Because like if you're gate capped, then the community can grow more organically and people can get in for a longer period before, let's say, institutional people buy in, or just in general before it hits mass adoption. But I think that the OA is something that is seen as new and innovative, but other people see it as just trying to game the system to have HEX's market cap be 20 times higher than it really is. And these coin ranking sites, you know, they are acting in good faith to gatekeep people who create, you know, Matty coin and then give it a $1 billion valuation by wash trading it. You know, those coins should be excluded from the top ranks. And HEX kind of cheated the system a little bit. Now, I think there's a good argument to be made that it's better game theory, it's innovative, it should be counted because the coins are being moved, the coins are being sacrificed. But it kind of helps, like, I think, build this whole polarization that we're still dealing with. You know, why is Richard not getting credit for all the good he's doing in the world? Why are Hexicans not in the mainstream media yet? Well, it's because of things like this, where, you know, we know we're right. So you know, that's the end of the conversation. But I think if we were to build a deeper understanding of, like, you know, why is it that Clay Collins and CoinMarketCap and all these other places, they're filtering us out, or they were perceived to be for some time. And it's because we're not fitting in to the filter that caught the scams before. So I think that when we're open with people, like, that's, you know, Clay was going to find out about this anyway. I mean, he did, and that's what caused our rank to go from, like, what were we, number 4 or something, all the way down. We went down to like number 20. And people gave me a lot of shit for having him on the show just to try to change his mind. And they were like, oh, we should ghost him. We should, you know.
When you say this, found out about this, what's this?
He did. So initially he didn't know that so much HEX was controlled by the origin address. And they have a policy about project controlled coins not counting as circulating. And people threw a fit at me and said, well, Bitcoin, Satoshi's coins are counted, and, you know, that's not fair.
Yeah,
we don't have to rehash it, but yeah, I understand your point. Yeah.
Well, it's good for people to know both sides, I think, of the argument.
It is. Yeah, I'm not trying to turn you off. I've gone round and round on this subject for a while with people too. So I think they're wrong, right? But that's what I mean. We can really start to go after this. I think Clay's wrong about what he did. But
How do you think it should be counted?
I think that contract's the contract, the numbers are the numbers, and that's the first thing you publish.
So then we would be at rank 2000 because everybody else would be able to game the system. I mean,
where I'd start is with the math. The contract is the contract and the math. Now, does that mean how would they game the system with their own market caps? If that's what we're discussing, market cap, right? How would they game the system by doing more trading for market cap? They can't do that, right? So what's the next level? I just feel like the opening start is, from my perception, maybe my perception's wrong, where we're starting is not from an even ground, right? You know, so okay, so every project's not the same, every product's not the same that's out there, and so if I was going to take couple different coins and try to compare them, I say start with the contract, because you know every contract has a supply, right? We know what the supply is, but then they all veer off and do their own anomalies. And so maybe for us, when you're looking at us, yes, you have to make some decisions based on this, and this. You're looking at Ethereum, maybe you don't count Vitalik stuff. Why is that not project stuff? I don't know. You know,
well,
somebody's deciding it is or isn't, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact methodology that Nomics uses regarding Vitalik's coins. But the difference, I would argue, is that Vitalik dumps on people's heads. And I mean, we haven't mentioned that on the show, but he just, like, in the past week or two, admitted to having the Ethereum Foundation dump the price. So, you know, he's the reason, which I've argued that he should do that and that he shouldn't, like both. But anyway, the point is that if Hexagons are advertising that it could be that the OA will never sell, and it's definitely true that the OA has never sold, then that, you know, you can't have it both ways. You can't have those coins counted as a market cap as circulating supply, but be telling people that they're never going to sell if you're trying to fit it into the framework that already existed.
Yeah. And this is why I use dexscreener.com now instead of Nomics.
Why? Because you like Hex having a higher market cap because you already own some. So it doesn't matter what everybody else is being, the standards everybody else is being held to. That's a question.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, if I had a ranking site, Hex would be number one, obviously. Bitcoin wouldn't even be on it.
Most transparent.
You know,
yeah,
it is number
most
one.
Transparent.
Yeah, right. Like, so.
If we do a cryptocurrency ranking website, there's only one coin on there.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
only one token.
Seriously, yeah.
Soon it'll be 3. It's a really short list. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, keeping it simple.
I guess it'd be 4 coins. But.
So, and it's fine that different places are having different criteria or different frameworks for ranking. But if, you know, we're scaring people off who are willing to work with us, you know, because there's only one way that we should be, you know, calculating this. I don't think there is one way to calculate it. I think that people trying to hide this data was a bad look. There, you know, Gunther was choosing to hide this data so that, well, I'm not sure why.
Well, what was he? I don't know if that's accurate, because what could you really hide? There's nothing to hide. I mean, it's on the blockchain. One more time, right?
Yeah, I mean, like,
how he interpreted the data.
Well, he deleted. So, like, he deleted Hex Audit. So, like, he made the decision that he thought it was bad to show people the data.
Which could be, I remember we were talking a little bit about stuff like that. Yeah. I just think that, we can get in a quagmire on the discussion about it, you know, and how important it is to us. But I think we want. I think in general we want to be treated fairly, and if they, I maybe it's hard for them to do it, but they should treat us fairly, whatever that means to us when we go to look at it. And obviously, we didn't think we were being treated fairly on the market cap portion of this, but at the same time, I'm reasonable enough to understand that you're saying they have corporate rules in place for what they do for ranking based on criteria. It's probably more than I've heard about it than in the past, that there were any types of rules that fit that in.
Yeah, I think that HEX is good enough that we could hold the same measuring stick that everybody else does, and we're early enough that we could hold the same measuring stick, and we could say, even without the OA coins, which they move, they sacrifice, they make themselves richer, all these things, and there are all these reasons why having those coins in the system makes sense. And if you look at the game theory, projects that don't have project controlled coins that probably won't sell and can help defend the project from forks and stuff, that's a good thing. But we can calculate it both ways in different areas and still kind of be fighting for the same thing, which is the truth, and kind of HEX is going to get there. I mean, it's another thing that we could bring into this discussion, I think, is the discovery I made that, and maybe other people have discovered this, but it seems like HEX staking is reaching some sort of escape velocity, because when I went back and I looked at excluding the first 100 days, because the first 100 days somebody's in office, nothing ever gets done anyway. And but there was a lot of noise in the early days. There weren't that many people in the system, but once we hit that 100-day mark, was just something I didn't pre-select that. But from 100 days until now, the average stake length has gone up, I think, more than the amount of time that's passed. So the average stake length is increasing in HEX faster than the amount of time that's passed, which is kind of that's the most bullish thing ever.
Yeah. How is that calculated? How do you calculate that in your head?
I just did a quick and dirty, I thought of it and I was because we were talking about longevity, escape velocity. And so I literally just I went to hexdailystats.com and I looked at the average stake length going back on day 100.
Yeah, I just went over to one of the charts to look. I hadn't realized it started to dip a little bit in the last little bit of time. So we're down to 652, which, by the way, is still phenomenal, right? And probably reaction to what's been going on with our delays. See what this shows for average. I was just curious how they're actually doing. Is it a weighted average or is it just a stake average?
I mean, the correct way to do it would be based on the total amount of shares or the total amount of HEX that exists, probably.
Yeah, because Ray, I'm not trying to play gotcha. What I want to know is actionable stuff. What can we do to improve things?
Yeah, it was about 1.84 years. Is that the payout per T-share, or is that the number of years? Wait, let me go back and look. This. No, that's got to be the payout per T-share. Well,
you're pretty close.
Yeah, they are really close these days. Average stake length right now is 6.5. Back on day 100.
I think that's, like I said, I just think that's momentary, thing where people are just holding off a little bit. You
don't think people will keep? You don't think that people will keep staking longer?
No, I think they will. I think they will. But the number, I assume that they're just looking at all open stakes and just giving us an average for all open stakes, which is less valuable to me, I think,
So
than knowing like a HEX or a T-share related weighted average. So 397 back then, huh? That's about double.
Yeah.
A little bit less than double.
yeah, so 2.4 years ago, it was 3.97. And so, yeah, so there it is right there. Now it's 6.5. So in 2.4 years, the average stake length increased 2.5 years.
Nice.
So,
yeah, there's,
that's cool.
this one I think there's opportunity to break down a lot further, because, right, we're looking, because you can see this on the, I had done this projection. I don't know what's up on our screen, but just looking at T-shares and when they expire, right?
Yes.
If we don't have any new stakes, of course we're going to, but just assume you don't have any new stakes. What happens every day as stakes end, right? They go away. Which stakes have longer days mostly are the ones that still are open. What happens automatically to your average? It's going up every day. It can't help but go up as short stakes end. And I don't know how, I haven't gone through enough analysis really to think about this, but that's what I'm thinking, is that probably need to be looking at something other than just simple average, like maybe some sort of rolling weighted. I think somebody had gotten to me this week. I have a note over here from one of the guys saying that we should be looking at that. But anyways, so David, did you hear what I'm saying with that? I'm not sure if Maddie's really quiet or frozen.
Yeah. Maddie, are you there? Can you hear us at all? I think it might just be me and you right now. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Maddie? Hey, there you are. Now you're back. Yeah. Yeah, we're good. Say something again, Maddie. You there?
Yeah, my internet's coming in and out, but
Yep.
Go on.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was just saying maybe just the simple average isn't good enough anymore. We should maybe dig into it. And it's kind of like what we're talking about. I mean, you want to know what might be useful to us, right? To understand, because I would like some actionable information out of that. Are we really going up? Are we, what are people doing on a daily basis? Maybe that type of thing. Maybe it's a running type of a number. To understand, what did everybody do in the last week, month? What did we get for that? Because from a protect yourself Hexagon's perspective, of course, I'm already telling people, I think that, not financial advice, but I think they should stake. How should they stake? They should stake in ladders. When should they stake? They should stake now and longer. So, be interesting to me to know if my message is getting through. Our message, group message, right? Are people actually doing that? And so just in the little bit of number, coming down a little bit, I'm thinking that probably there's some trepidation at the moment waiting for Pulse. Maybe. And they're backing off a little bit. I know. Yeah. I can tell you I haven't made a Quattro Cinco stake in a few months. So anecdotal, but
yeah, my last Quattro Cinco was when Hedron came out. Yeah. So I can same here.
Yeah, I'm in a holding pattern.
Yeah. Load the boat, buy the dip, get ready for the fork, get liquid. Yeah. I think that's the plan right now.
Yeah. Well, I think I see Burrs out there. Yes, HEX will be the #1 store value. I think that's going to be accurate. So I'm building it up.
Now, if we were to, I guess, start to wrap up, like our discussion here, although I'm super open to continuing as long as you guys want to. Maybe a good question would be, what types of analyses do we think would be useful in the future, maybe that haven't been done yet?
Say that again, Maddie. What was the question?
What would be a good analysis for us to see from this treasure trove of data? Like, not necessarily telling somebody else what analysis to do, but like what are good ideas of what analyses could be done. So for example, I would love to see, to be able to see like, and Chrispy is the one who I think said this first. You could start to build profiles like Silver the Antidote did once upon a time, to start to look at the psychology of each account to see like, oh, when the price goes up, this person is selling more or buying more or staking more. You could start to build like, profiles of, are the whales doing something different than they normally do versus other, the sharks? There are different ways that you could break down the behavior, not just for the system, but for maybe people that you want to zero in on and understand better.
Mm-hmm.
You could also see, like, for example, how many people are in profit, right? That'd be a good thing to have for marketing. It's like, did people who stake, how many of them are in profit, and how fast are their stakes coming out to where they might, were those accounts people who sold in the past and now they're waiting to sell again? Or are those people, do they already show a pattern of restaking their TShares? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know what all the measures might be yet for my own list, but I think like a list of a scorecard list. There's certainly at least some. I think before I blew my mind with this because it was too much information, I'd probably start with simple stuff, like just like you were kind of getting at. Did this address ever buy? Yes, no. Did it ever sell? Yes, no. Did it ever stake? Yes, no. And then build the second level of that scorecard to be able to dig down into that and maybe create that type of analysis. I'm just kind of talking out loud about what I think my approach would be, not how it has to be, just logically to try to figure out the analysis on an address. Because you can get into some funky stuff, like, I mean, you just imagine. I bet you other people do the same type of stuff. I mean, like I have idiosyncrasies about things I do. Some things, as an example, wouldn't surprise me. There's a whole group of people that when a stake ends, they're ending it so fast that sometimes they're ending it early, right? And then there's probably a whole bunch of people, because I know this fact, they don't ever come back. And then you get a whole bunch of people that they end it the day after it start getting penalties, and probably every category in between, right? Because of how they do things with them, right? So yeah, I mean, and we can run that through an AI engine that'll help us try to decipher some of this stuff once we get that information, right? Kind of like grab those kind of insights. We got to get the base information first.
Onboard those AIs.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so I like that idea a lot, Maddie, because I think we can come up with some things like that, right?
Yeah.
Maybe perhaps even maybe there's a marketing aspect to it too. Try to figure out, so what are all these people? So if we, I don't, this isn't a problem statement. So let me turn it around. I would like more people who have been in HEX to stay in HEX longer, and I would like people who have bought HEX to stake. Now, of course, part of that's because it pumps my own bag, but I also think it's good for them. I think it'd be good for them. But I understand there's some different viewpoints on it. So if my thesis is that, then I should be able to look at some of these, some of these addresses, and maybe I figure out, so where are they going? Maybe not physically, but where are they going? What kind of coins are they looking at? What are they getting involved in? Or maybe, I can address it. I say me, but I mean, we address it in some way during these shows or on other shows or through memes to say, you shouldn't do this, you should do that, but some of it gets so into so much detail of, I'm not sure how I'm not just sure how much action you can take on, like, here's a great example, right? There are other tokens and coins I was involved in back in 17, right? And one of them I made pretty good returns on, but I sold it all for HEX along the way, right? Which is good for me, right? But I did this little graphic that showed, what the returns would have been if you bought $1,000 of this on this in the COVID dip. And if you bought $1,000 worth of HEX, it'd be worth $250,000 today, right? And if you bought $1,000 worth of Tezos on that date, it was going to be worth like $2,000. Which one do I want? I want the $200,000 one, right? And so recently, I've heard people talking about tokens like this in our community, right? Because they can, so it's okay, right? They talk about some other stuff they're interested in. Well, maybe if I knew that it's hard to do that on the obviously cross block, but if pick another coin that might be in a similar situation or token like that, see somebody offloading into another coin, and you have that kind of information, maybe you target those types of people, say, hey, listen, try to, this is what happens when you go to other coins, right? This is why of course, it's self-serving, isn't it? And I'm kind of blithering along here, but I'm just trying to think through how you could use information like this, build a credible marketing campaign to convince people to stay in longer or join more with us.
Yeah. Going off that too, I think it would be super interesting to know, like, were airdrops a net benefit? So you could look on chain and see, like, did people take their HEX and buy the new token, or did they take the new token and buy HEX, or did they take the new token and cash out and then stake longer or more?
Yeah. Well, here's a good one for you. I think it was you and I talking. No, I was talking to somebody else about this, right? Okay. How about this one for you? All right. We're a pretty strong community that care about each other. Okay, we're on the internet mostly, but I would argue that we're a pretty strong community and care about each other. That means we want the best for everybody. How about when you noticed, assuming we met a certain level of it's okay, and you notice that Hadron's in the past now, so I want to rip the scab off on that. But just in general, you've got something that's given us a airdrop. What if you knew that the certain group of addresses that are HEX users aren't getting their airdrop? Now yes, those communities, up to them to do their thing, right? But I'm interested in all the Hexicans doing well, like they were my own onboards, right? What did I do? Right? I knew that they had HEX, right? Because I onboarded them, right? I knew they had HEX and stakes. I curated what drops they should go get.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reminded them, and I gave them the safe sites and all that type of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of offbeat, but that would be another type of thing where I was monitoring. Hey, man, how come we're not the project now? We're not operating for the project. We're operating for, hey, we got a group of Hexicans. We want to succeed the best that they could do, and at least hit my level that I'm interested in. This X coin is okay to claim. with my full intent that I'm going to turn that into more HEX. Sorry, other guys. but you know, that's one possible strategy. So why wouldn't I surface that at the top and say, hey, listen, we got a whole bunch of people. Half the people didn't get their stuff. Why? It was real. It was real stuff and could help us all, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, so again, kind of throwing stuff against the wall, thinking about how you might surface some of these ideas to help people.
Thanks for the $5 super chat. Hex Whale Bot, spelled differently than normal. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Like that smash button.
Yeah, so there's probably some behavioral stuff like that, Maddie, we could pick up.
Yeah, that'd be really fascinating to look at and see. Yeah, all the behaviors that we can see and what's being rewarded naturally and what needs a kick or nudge. That's the economics term.
I have one I can describe quickly. I would like to put some sort of automated process in to decompose the OA stakes. I think I mentioned that before. That's another one that's on my list. And not their stakes, their addresses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wouldn't mind having some sort of visual thing where I can crawl through all the addresses. You know, because then it puts, I think I'll be okay with what I'll see. I think based on what I had, but it's a whole, you know, trust but verify thing. In theory, right? Address to address to address to address, right? I mean, you should be able to decompose that with enough recursive calls to be able to say, find all addresses that have ever sent to all addresses that are within the parent-child relationship, right?
Yeah, I did a little fooling around with that on was it duneanalytics.com?
Oh yeah.
And the output is, and the interface of that website is awful. But I for fun, actually somebody else did it. I actually forked their project and it's kind of made my own copy, and that's exactly what it did. It was just if it went from OA to another address, put that here, and just listed it out. Where did it go? And the quantity. So.
Yep.
But it would be nice to get in a what's the website? Glassnode.com, I want to say, gives like a visual representation of like the flow of coins in Ethereum. So I know there's tools out there that really help you visualize what's happening.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should look to discover something like that, you know?
Yeah, that'd be really cool to see. I was wanting to refresh on like what those sites were called and you know, because at some point I want to get better at chain analysis than I am.
In theory, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but the OA granddaughter is right now, I thought was around 3,500 addresses. So not totally unmanageable to figure out what's going on with those addresses, right? If that's how many there are.
We have somebody in the chat who has isolated those pretty well, it sounds like. I already asked them to DM me if they can a while back,
please.
and that'd be super helpful to link up.
Yeah, I suspect there, you know, actually, you know, even though we're talking about this stuff here and we're looking at that, I suspect some of this information has already been surfaced by other people. It's just not necessarily on a public site for probably a couple different reasons. But, you know, nothing nefarious, but, you know, that whole thing about data security in the first place. And also, if you're in the trading trading side of things where you're actually doing some trading, you have a lot of this information available to you. Yeah, might be actionable. I don't know. I'll let you know.
Yeah, like we've seen on the trading side of things, t.me/hex trading, people rush in there when Richard rushes in there when the price goes up or down a lot and says, "Hey, tell me what's going on." Because people do have profiles built, and you know, this person is always dumping from this address. So okay, this person is also saying, how do I pronounce that?
Oh yeah,
Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick.
I found about 260 OA child addresses. There are other unofficial addresses, which are about 2,000 addresses that are linked to the ETH adoption amplifier. Cool.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could get that kind of information together.
Yeah. Teamwork makes the dream work. So
it does.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to say before we wrap up this episode? And I mean, we can always come back and talk about it again in the future.
I just want to say, Chrispy, I think you've done a wonderful job with HEXFire.0. It's a really good site.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, there's some really unique stuff we've never seen before. So, and thank you for providing that for free to everybody. That's really kind of you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I had that site sitting around since last year, 14 months ago. They had put some information out there. I just never got around putting anything great on top of it, you know. So it was a good way to bring things together. So thank you for that.
So everybody should be looking in the description below for the links to follow all of us on our different channels. Go ahead right now and follow David Feeder on his YouTube and Twitter accounts. Go hit up Chrispy on Telegram and Twitter. And do you have any other places where people can find you guys?
HEXFire.io, which you already have out there. If somebody runs into a problem with the site, let me know. There's a .io and a .info, so they can do it. But yeah, I think that's about it for now. Looking for ideas, man. I ain't got enough brain power for all the stuff that's there. Some of the best ideas, it's the way it really is in life, right? Some of the best ideas come from other people. So you got ideas, bring them up, right? Surface them up. I like to think, well, my ideas are the best ones, but turns out that's not accurate.
Cool. Well, what else? Is there anything coming up this week? I think I'm going to do a streaming 101 class that'll just meet once and will be tomorrow. I'll post about that in my Telegram group, which is t.me/PLS Academy. I'll type that into the chat now. It's in the links below. And that's going to be like, I'm going to go over the basics, like what webcam you could buy on a budget, what's the best webcam, green screen, links for all that stuff, how to use StreamYard, where to find resources, because I've learned a lot by watching certain StreamYard shows that they make themselves to teach people. But it'll probably have some good stuff even for people who are well versed in streaming. I know that I am on a mission to get Richard Hart to start streaming his YouTube to his Twitter account, which is that's super. I mean, sometimes I get more views on Twitter than on YouTube. That's pretty rare, but like he has twice as many followers on Twitter. So there's I think going to be a lot of stuff that would be helpful for people. So I'm going to do a 1-part episode tomorrow about that, and Thursday's Hex Therapy, and then next week we'll be back with more Game Theory Gang. So, and then David is on a show or two each week and has a new tutorial. Can you tell us about that?
Yep. I just did a tutorial the other night about Icosa, which is I'm calling it an expansion pack for Hedron. Yeah. So I went, it's on the testnet for PulseChain. I clicked every button, which is what I love to do. That's my goal in every tutorial. I will click every button. I will explain how it works, and then we're done. So yeah, check out my YouTube if you want to see how that works.
Very cool. And then are you always on the happy hour show?
No, it's
But Hex
Savannah-
Revision.
no, that one's on hiatus too. I don't have any regular shows other than this one right now. This is
Okay.
the regular.
Fair enough. Right on. And if there's anybody out there who is a streamer who can get Chrispy on your show so that he can, and I think the more that people can get out there and tweet about hexfire.io, share it on your YouTube community page, and tell your friends and family that the data has arrived. So until next time, hit the like and subscribe button. Stake wisely, my friends, and peace out.
Speak wisely.
Bye, Hexkins.
Goodbye.